Call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, April the 30th. Purpose is to go through budget workshop number 1. And so I'd like to turn it over to the city manager to carry us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, members of council. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's hard to believe, but it is once again time to formally kick off our budget process. This is now FY25 for the city of Sandy Springs. This is workshop number 1. Before we dive in today, I think you all have found your notebooks. In the inside front pocket of your notebook, you will find a summary document that has the planning assumptions for capital. It also has the planning assumptions for fleet. And then the final one, which I'll ask you not to start studying yet, is your capital ballot that we will talk about as we get to the end of the workshop.
Oh,
As we go through, yes.
I thought we weren't going to do one this year.
We actually had enough money to have a ballot this year, which was a pleasant surprise. So before I dive into the presentation materials today, I would be very remiss if I did not take a few minutes to thank Tony Carlisle, Michael Valpeter, Tanya Yarborough, Kristen Byer-Smith, Chris Owens, our department heads, and certainly last but not least, Caroline Galvin, who was responsible for the beautiful document that you see before you today and the notebook that you have. So thank you all for everyone's hard work. This is truly a process that takes a significant amount of time for your team. We actually began our FY25 budget process in February of each year. It kicked off this year with a staff memo that explained our process and the due dates for departmental budget requests to be submitted. Then we held departmental budget meetings in April, where we went through line by line all of the requests that had been made. And that culminates in the calendar that you see before you today. We're at that third line on this table, budget workshop number 1. Our next budget workshop will be in 2 weeks, which will be another special called work session on May 14th. We'll have the formal line item detail presentation of the FY25 city manager's proposed budget on May 21st within our normal council meeting. The first public hearing will be on June 4th. And then June 18th, we are scheduled to have our final public hearing and the budget adoption vote. As we do with all of our budget processes and everything that we do here as a staff, we are driven by council's adopted priorities. These priorities were formally adopted by council on January 30th, 2024. And to remind everyone, customer service and citizen engagement is at the core of everything that we do. Public safety, transportation accessibility and community appearance, economic development with a focus on redevelopment, recreational and cultural enrichment, sustainable growth and environmental stewardship, and water reliability are the priorities that this budget is built upon. Okay, thank you, Caroline. The purpose of today's meeting is to receive feedback and direction from council as we continue to work on developing the FY25 city manager's proposed budget. We're going to walk through the FY25 budget planning assumptions and discuss so that we have an understanding of the public safety, general government services, and facilities priorities as part of our overall service delivery and capital programs. As a reminder, all of this culminates in the presentation of the recommended budget or the proposed budget on May 21st. Since incorporation, we have followed a priority-based budgeting model. That means that we set our calendar early every year, and it begins with the validation of those priorities by council during our annual council retreat. We then hold budget hearings in March and April with our department directors, and we review their current year budget projections, so what they are planning to spend for the remainder of the current fiscal year, as well as any requested enhancements. All of their requests have to be tied to the adopted priorities, and then we identify our assumptions and validate them early in the process, which is where we are today. Similarly, our capital improvement project budgeting is also based on the priorities that are validated during the retreat. We take a close look at our 5-year adopted capital improvement plan and identify projects that need additional funding in the next fiscal year or where they are in their life cycle. New projects are recommended during the year by council and staff, and any prior projects with prior partial year funding may be made whole in this recommended budget. All of those project recommendations are vetted by our staff, and where funding is available, a ballot may be proposed and presented. That ballot is in your materials today. We are asking that you take that home, rank those projects, and then return them to the city manager's office by Friday, May the 10th is our deadline this year. So as we started our revenue projection process, we wanted to take a very close look at our commercial real estate and the impact that commercial real estate and the changes in those values may potentially have on the city's revenues. We are seeing modest organic revenue growth. We do have a relatively healthy real estate sector, but there are some changes that are happening. When we looked at this, we brought in Haddow and Company, who has worked with the city for a number of years on commercial real estate. Haddow will actually be coming to your next council work session on May 7th to present these findings of their analysis, but we wanted to give you a preview of them in today's budget workshop so you understand the budget projections that we are operating from. The numbers that you see in the table in the middle of the screen are our actual budgeted amounts. So for FY24, we had projected on real estate property taxes that we would receive $44 million. We are actually projecting that we will receive $46 million.
Ma'am, can I see you for a second? Yes. Sorry.
Okay. For FY25, you see that we are projecting a slight increase to take us to 44.5 million, a $500,000 increase. As you all are aware, each year we are very conservative budgeters. We underestimate the revenues and overestimate our expenditures so that we don't end up with unpleasant surprises at the end of the year. The table at the bottom details the analysis conducted by Haddow and Company for the portion of our real estate revenues that is received off of our commercial office space. Our total city revenue in the FY24 general fund budget was $118,518,880. The property taxes collected $44 million, which means that property taxes were responsible for 37.1% of our total revenue. When we look at office properties and we look at the total appraised value of office properties, that is slightly over $4 billion based upon the records provided to us by the Fulton County Tax Assessor's Office. That means we have an approximate office property tax revenue of 7.6 million or 7.7 million rounded, which is 6.5% of our total real estate revenues. Looking at the number of appeals that came in to the tax assessor's office, Haddow and Company projected forward for us some operating assumptions for impact to revenue. Large multi-tenant office buildings are likely to experience the most significant value decline moving forward. The 14% decline of the selected 8 buildings, which is in the first line, the multi-tenant conventional, which were surveyed by Haddow and Company, is a good indicator of what we could possibly expect in 2024. The medical office market has not been nearly as impacted as conventional markets since those tenants are less likely to work remotely and they require in-office visits and they are vital. Thus, that assessment change should be relatively small. Office buildings that contain less than 100,000 square feet, which equates to roughly 24% of our total rentable square footage in the city, should also experience a smaller value decline than the larger buildings. Single tenant buildings also will experience a smaller value decline than multi-tenant. And while office buildings are likely to continue to fall, our analysis does not indicate that it will have a significant negative impact on the city's overall revenues, coming in at roughly $854,000 based upon an 11% decline.
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure. So
Apartments are not included in any. of
Not in
this
this, but apartments are included in the tax assessor's commercial valuation.
So what you showed on the previous?
No, that is all office. I'm getting around to that.
Okay.
So the amount of real estate that taxes that are collected in the city that come from commercial properties, and this is based on actual taxes paid during 2023. The commercial number was $20,129,150, which is 38.9%. That does include apartment buildings and office. That's anything that is considered commercial.
Okay, so compared to the 37.1, that difference is,
That is only the offices, so it's a
Okay.
different extrapolation.
okay,
The residential number that was paid in 2023, $26,926,000, roughly 52% of our property taxes that are received. So when you consider the fact that 52% of our property tax revenues that are received by the city come from residential and 39% come from commercial, we have a very healthy tax base to be able to continue to provide services to our community.
What was the first number you said? 20 million?
$20,129,150,
That was from.
commercial.
Commercial.
category does just a standard shopping center go into?
Commercial. That's all commercial.
It's not any of these four?
No, this is office.
Office, yes. So it's in that 39.
So here's a question, so, I'm sorry.
No.
So what makes up the 44,500,000 that's proposed for next year?
It's a blend of all of it. So that is commercial, industrial, and residential. And going back to this, we are actually on track to receive 46 million in property tax revenues this year. But because we want to accommodate any fluctuations that may happen in assessed values, we are not proposing.
No, I got that.
Okay,
My point is, you're projecting 40, we've collected 46, we think. Next year, you're projecting 44.5.
yes,
So that's $1.5 million.
yes, sir.
So, and 854,000 of that is in the
It's,
next page.
it's roughly a $760,000 delta between the two numbers that you're going after. Yes.
And the 854,000 on the next page.
Mhm.
And then there's another 700,000 that gets us to the 1.5
Correct.
million. The other 700,000 comes from what's left.
It could be that someone has, that they contested their, appealed their assessment, what they actually pay goes down. My point is that we are not projecting it as revenue to be received by the city at this point.
Once you see handouts projections, you'll see that a lot of these office buildings appealed their assessments. And a lot of them were successful in their appeals. So we have to assume that that will occur again this year and that some of them will be successful and therefore have a downward impact on revenues.
All right, so is the bulge just starting, or is the bulk of these just starting, or is the bulk of these gonna happen next year?
It's been gradually happening over the last 3 to 4 years. It really hit.
So it's not hitting us.
No.
No, because we're diverse.
Yeah, we have a broader
Good thing.
base than just office as a
Right.
tax base, so.
All right, okay, thank you.
And as we get further along into our next budget workshops, when you see the line item detail for how we projected revenues, you'll also see how we're trying to accommodate for any of these fluctuations that may happen.
Last question, that 46, you about to be.
I was gonna say, how much of this 46 million have we already collected?
Tony?
We have collected, just give me 1 second. To date, we've collected $45,889,798. 45,889,798.
Almost all of it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And this was through March, so we still have
As
every
of
month.
today.
That's as of today. Okay.
Thank you.
That was my question.
Okay. All right. Okay, Then moving forward, slide 9 in your book. As we started working on our operating budget this year, you all have always made it clear to me that you want the city to remain to be the employer of choice and the market leader. This budget does that and includes a 5% cost of living adjustment for all city employees. It also includes the assumption that we are going to fully absorb the estimated 12% increase to health insurance. When we get to the next table, I'll show you the bump up in that over the prior year. And that is something that really makes Sandy Springs competitive when we are hiring, because we have not passed along the increase to health insurance into the premiums our employees pay in a number of years. We're also projecting a 14% increase in general liability insurance. I know all of you are aware how the insurance market is changing. We are all paying more in insurance, and the city is certainly not immune from that. This budget also funds the annual subcontractor agreements that we have for public safety services, as well as a projection for our call center, which I'll explain why I say projection in just a couple of minutes, contracts for our public works providers, as well as recreation and parks maintenance. And then finally, it does include fully fund the debt service requirements for the Public Facilities Authority on this campus, City Springs, as well as police and municipal court complex, and then fire apparatus replacement, as well as equipment, new defibrillators. Try saying that fast twice. This table that is on page 10 in your notebook includes a summary of these operating budget assumptions. You see our debt and principal and interest for the PFA is actually only slightly increasing this year over FY24. Our call center subcontractor agreement is currently under evaluation. We have received a number of bids, and at this point, staff is working on the evaluation, and we'll have a recommendation coming forward at a June council meeting on the award of call center services. The North Fulton Regional Radio Authority also had a slight uptick this year in the operating cost, largely to pay for capital needs as the radio system continues to age. We've also included the continued service agreements with community nonprofits. We have a detail on that later in the notebook on page 54 that we will talk through, and I'll explain what that $10,000 decrease is from. Here you see our projection for general liability insurance going up to nearly $2 million to insure the city. That 5% cost of living adjustment for city employees is roughly $2.4 million. Health insurance increase. Health insurance on behalf of the city, our employees, and their dependents will be $8.9 million this year. Our animal control agreement, as you all are very well aware, that cost went up pretty dramatically this past year. That is a rounded number at $400,000. Debt service for fire apparatus and equipment at $1.7 million. Jail services, fortunately, is not seeing a huge jump this year like it did last year. That is increasing to $435,000. Public works subcontractor agreements also has just a slight change this year, going down to $5.3 million. Recreation and parks subcontractor agreements, also a slight decrease. And then the other big ticket item this year is the increase in cost for EMS subsidy to have enhanced services and reduced response time.
And what did we land on for the EMS response time? Because we just had a presentation a couple months ago about adjusting the ambulance response times and changing the way we respond to things. What is built into this?
That is built in at 12 minutes or less.
Okay.
And we are still finalizing that agreement with the Northern cities and with AMR. It is back with AMR for review at this point, but I anticipate we will have it on the agenda probably in the
This
May.
should be pretty close.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is. Also, one of the enhancements that is in the budget this year that Chief Sanders will talk about is a community paramedic officer who will actually work towards driving calls away from EMS that don't require EMS. So now we're going to transition into our operating departments, and first up is Chief DeSimone.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start off first with just, it's been a tough 24 hours for law enforcement. Most of you know, I came from Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, did 20 years there, before coming here just last Thursday. The chief of CMPD and myself taught a class in Miami, Florida at a law enforcement conference. And, my phone has just been blowing up. Found out last night that a good friend of mine who was an FBI agent that I worked with, his son was one of the ones who was shot. So it's been pretty tough. He's now in the hospital, but it's been a pretty tough 24 hours for law enforcement, and particularly for me, it's been pretty tough.
Well, Chief, I know it's been tough on you because you've got a lot of ties to that particular agency. It just reminds us how dangerous work of our first responders is, and just never know what you're walking into too often. And we have members of our force on these task forces.
We do.
So
Yes,
you know, it's
tough.
an amalgamation of a lot of different law enforcement agencies that serve on these task forces. So
And the officer who was shot that I know, he came and rode with our department when he was in the Army down at Fort Benning. And that's where he got the impetus to say, I want to get into law enforcement after my military service. So he was here and rode with street crimes and patrol in 2019. So, and my youngest son, a lot of you don't know this, he's currently in the police academy at Charlotte Mecklenburg. So anyway, just tough day.
And it's getting worse.
Nothing. It's going downhill from here. Can you get me?
Can you, you keep changing the monitor.
Pushing too hard, huh?
Why not just do that?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, this is the overview for 2023, and this is what's called the NIBR system. You all may remember it as UCR, Uniform Crime Reports. Last 3 years from 23 to 21. Violent crimes stay about the same. Murder, armed robbery, rape, aggravated assault, property crimes up some. Traffic incidents, that's our wrecks. Always a lot of wrecks in Sandy Springs. So about 5,400 for 2023. Our tickets went down some in 2023. Our warnings are about the same. Next slide, please.
Chief, what do you attribute the decline in tickets? Are people driving slower?
Well, it could be. And another thing too, we had a lot of events we had to work. And most of these events, whether they're call outs to help Atlanta with the QRF or even our own events here at City Springs at the Green, come out of patrol and the traffic unit. So I think last year we had 12 deployments with the QRF, and you're taking all the people who write the tickets and, you know, having them do other duties. So that will decrease the amount of enforcement that they do. Whether it's the Support of Israel event or just big events here at City Green. So calls for service, that's people who call 911 or officer initiated, like you see somebody that you have a contact with for a call for service. So that's decreased again. It could be because of all the other events we had to do last year. Could be a drop in 911 calls, but mostly because of staffing also. And I always say that, you know, we have good staffing, but Georgia National Guard, that takes a lot of people and officers who are injured. We've had 2 officers out on long-term disability because of car wrecks. One got hit by a car and one was rear-ended by a tractor trailer on 400. So they're still out. And but I just learned today from the deputy chief that one of our National Guard officers just returned this week from Syria. So he was in Syria for a year. And glad to get back to somewhere that's green. Next slide, please. Top 10 calls for service. As you can see, business checks, that's just officers checking all the businesses around Sandy Springs. Your traffic enforcement going all the way down to domestic disputes and again, driving. One thing that I do want to point out here that used to be in the top 10 always was false alarms. And you just don't see them anymore. And, you know, anytime you can get rid of something that is false anyway, 99.8% of all alarm calls that come in are false, and drop them off, it frees up your officers to handle other things that are here. Next slide, please. These are the number of arrests, domestics, traffic stops, stolen vehicle recovered, SWAT incidents. SWAT incidents are another thing that take more special operations and patrol people out from doing their routine jobs, and the QRFs. And the QRF deployment, remember we had the big protest here in Sandy Springs, and then we helped Atlanta against the Public Safety Training Center 11 times last year. That's slowed down a lot.
Are some of these numbers, like, for example, domestics? So domestics and domestic disputes, that's different. I'm just trying to compare it to.
No, they're the same.
Oh, okay, so should the number be the 2265 or like domestics? Or the calls?
This is
or-
22.
Oh, okay, this is 2023, says,
Tables 22 in departure.
and it says 2265 for domestic disputes.
What is it, this slide or another one?
Well,
One before it?
I was just looking at cost for service where it says domestics. I was just comparing this to the previous.
Is one actually a call and one actually
Go
you
back
go
to-
out
Yeah,
there?
go back one.
One was 1 year, one was the next year.
No,
These are about 20.
no, so the.
No,
board
what's
is
this 22, what's this
2023, and then the
23?
next page is 2023, so you're asking
calls
us
for
for
service.
358
Versus that's what, yeah, I'm asking about the 358 versus the 2265. That's what it is. I think they're both.
That's 22. This is 23, the bar graph here. And the next one,
I think it should be arrest. You arrested 358 people on domestics rather than it saying calls for service. Go to the next.
next one,
Yes, right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those were actual arrests.
rest.
It's like the total and then the breakout.
It's like the 10.
Yeah, not every domestic results in an arrest.
Got you. So of those 2265, 358
Right.
resulted in an arrest. Got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This here on our narcotics unit, that is just our vice narcotics unit at the police department. This does not count what the mayor mentioned, our task forces that we have with the DEA, FBI, and Homeland Security investigations. So this is just organic to Sandy Springs itself.
697 pounds of marijuana.
Got a lot of marijuana, and a lot of it's coming from California and Colorado.
What a huge increase, 400%.
Yeah. Fentanyl, of course, that's concerning because fentanyl is very deadly in a very small amount. The firearm seizures did go down as far as locally, just inside Sandy Springs, not including the federal task forces again. And our currency, it's still very high on with our federal task forces because they've got certain units that just specifically target cartels and the money. So next slide, please. Call outs, that's when the traffic unit gets called out to a serious incident that may not be a fatality. Just had one, I think it was Sunday night, where someone was ejected out of the vehicle and still hasn't died yet. So the fatalities, we're actually doing pretty good. Just a few years ago, 2020, 2019, we were averaging about one a month in the city of Sandy Springs. So we added more people to the traffic unit, and I told you the numbers would go down, and we've about cut it in half. So it's good. The traffic response vehicles, those are 2 trucks. The interesting thing here to pull out of these stats is if you look at gallons of gasoline dispensed from 100 to 247 to 838. And we attribute that to the cost of gasoline has gotten so expensive that people cannot afford to top off their tanks anymore. And they're getting stranded on 285 and 400 because they just can't afford to fill up their tank like they could in earlier years. And as a result, they're running out of gas. I mean, that's a huge increase. So we carry several cans of gasoline on those trucks. So we don't have to run and get it. We don't have to take them to, fill up a can and bring it back. The longer you leave a car disabled on the side of the road, the more dangerous it becomes. And that's what caused this serious accident Saturday or Sunday night. The car disabled in one of the lanes, couldn't get off because of the barrier wall and was rear-ended at night.
What's the best way to assign a cost to that? Just
To,
the gallons dispensed? How do you?
I guess I just take regular unleaded and whatever it is, a gallon times that. But that we don't charge them anything for that. It's better for us to get them off the road and get them going and just do it as a community service. Probably the most, it's the unit that gets no complaints and gets all the accolades.
We keep up with how many of them, or most of them, I would assume, aren't Sandy Springs residents.
I'm not sure. I remember the mayor got a email from the mayor of Dunwoody a year or so ago because he got stranded out there, or a family member did. And but we don't normally do that.
Do we have many electric EVs that lose their charge? So they're not on gas because you can't bring in a charge, they just have to.
We have
right?
a generator that produces electricity and we plug it in. No, just.
No, I mean, I didn't, there's no battery, there's no portable battery, I don't think.
Good question. I don't know how that works, but I don't know. And the fire chief can talk more about this later about the fire we just had tracking that came through about how more flammable, I guess, batteries are. Didn't realize it. We were just set through some training that came out through our training section about how to handle EV battery fires. So interesting.
Hey, Chief, a quick question. All of this work here, 285 and 400 is coming to a conclusion. It looks like we're gonna have about a year before it ramps back up again, going with the new projects. So I guess a lot of this may be as a result of all of the construction and the traffic and the delays and things. So is your anticipation this is gonna maybe abate a bit this coming year?
It may, but I'm not really sure. I think one thing as far as the disabled motorists, because there's not as much construction debris, nails and bolts and things. I know personally in my patrol vehicle, I've had 2 flat tires, just nails and bolts coming up 400. And I think that will help a lot. The biggest problem we have, and it's really confusing, you'll get out there, is if, say, I need help and I'm on 400 northbound. 400 northbound where? Because you have like the inner, the outer, and the far outer that you can't access from the other lanes. So if you're coming 400 northbound out of Buckhead, you're sort of in the middle 5 lanes. If you're coming off of Glen Ridge, it's another set. If you're coming off the next road up, Abernathy, you have another set of ramps, and it's pretty confusing as to where you
Find these people?
to find them and for them to know where they are. That's the biggest thing. If you can tell us exactly where you are, we can probably find you. But if you don't know where you're at, that makes it difficult for us. So I don't know if we can work with GDOT and, have
That
some.
may be a conversation we need to have with GDOT to be able to do a better job of helping motorists identify where they are in case of emergency.
Right.
I've gone through all those lanes and it's run across my mind, how do we get to some of these folks in an emergency? So I actually was thinking about that as I was driving 400 last week, that it is an issue.
We had a suicide several months ago where somebody jumped off the flyaway lane for 400 southbound to 285 eastbound. And I was out driving around. I could see the police cars up high and I could see them down low on 285, but I couldn't get to them from where I was. I can see them, but I could not. I finally gave up. I just couldn't get over there because it was so difficult. And if you miss your ramp, like if you're going 400 southbound and you want to go 285 westbound, you better catch that ramp. If not, you're gonna end up on
Gotta
Lennox
catch
Road.
the North
Yeah.
Springs MARTA station to be able to go through there. So you got, you know, it's like getting off the Roswell Road. You got 2 miles before you get to Roswell Road to check it off. So it is confusing. We may want to have a conversation with GDOT about some kind of identifiers that will help emergencies.
Marking numbering system.
Well, hopefully this construction being over will help this a bit in this coming year, hopefully.
It does, obviously the ramps and the express lanes and the flyovers, that there are better. So it's gonna be a benefit to the city. Any other questions on TRB? Next, please. Open records request. This is a breakdown of the open records request we've gotten. 3,237. That's a lot.
It's a 50% increase over last year. 30,000 tasks versus 20,000.
What percentage is this of our overall open records requests?
It's about, it's just shy of half. So really that number, like the 3237, that represents the number of staff, the number of requests staff from PD records or any PD department touched. And so sometimes you have several staff who are working on a particular request. So that doesn't happen with the majority of them, but that is factored into that number. And I also want to clarify what tasks mean is, of course, you receive a request, you got to identify the documents that are responsive to that request. You have to redact those documents. So you receive it, you upload a responsive doc, you have to do some redactions. Sometimes there's some coordination between staff that happens that we're able to count, like maybe you're passing notes to one another to explain the records that are being produced. So all of that activity is counted in terms of tasks. And the idea is to really reflect the workload that the records team is putting in to do this part of their work.
So you said over 50%.
Just about 50%.
About half of them
Yeah.
are police.
And thanks to Rocky, who's instrumental in our open records requests and helps our team out over in permits and records at the police department. The state law for open records is very archaic. And somebody asked earlier about how much does citizens of Sandy Springs get gasoline. Well, the majority of these open records requests are coming from non-citizens of Sandy Springs. And probably the fee that needs to be charged needs to go up. A lot of them are law firms, obviously, to get recs. And I would say the majority are not in Sandy Springs. So we are, the citizens of Sandy Springs, the taxpayers are paying for a service that non-citizens are using quite frequently.
How has the average time of completion changed from 22 to
So this
23?
next slide, let's have that on there.
So I don't have the exact number. Do we have the number?
We don't have it in here, but we can get that for you for the next workshop.
Yeah, we're still averaging about
Are we
3
able to
days.
use AI for any of this?
So you still have to do quality control even when you use AI because there are routinely times that AI is not accurate. I read an article last week, I believe it was, where New York City had put an AI chatbot on their website to help with business development, people starting businesses, and it was giving actually fake information. So there are things that you can do. It can help with some of the redaction, but you still have to have a human that goes and looks at it to make sure.
I just didn't know if it would lower the time.
Yeah. It can help, but it won't totally.
What type of fee structure do we have for open records requests? Is it up in certain threshold?
Sure. So the state law requires that the city charge for time and materials it takes to produce. The first 15 minutes of working a request is without charge. So the majority of requests, it's without charge, like regardless of the amount of tasks, you have to accomplish to get to execute that request. So the majority are without charge, but yeah, so in terms of fees, you're charging for the staff members' time, the hourly rate it takes them to execute whatever the request is.
Okay, so do we have a number for the amount of revenue?
I can provide that.
We'll add that to the next week, probably.
But fundamentally trying to cover your costs of doing this, but if all of them are less than 15 minutes, you're not recovering anywhere near
No.
the total costs involved with these.
You're not.
Yeah, 15 minutes, but times, so many thousands,
Oh, yeah.
you're losing thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in revenue. But you still have to do the work. And the city, the taxpayers of the city still have to pay for records clerks and permits. So, yeah, very, very archaic system. Next. So for fiscal year 2025, requested enhancement social media tracking software. That's what our criminal intelligence uses to track maybe threats on social media, school violence, things like that, where people will, and everybody puts things on social media, good guys, bad guys, everything. And there's software out there that will track that, give you an alert if there's, say, a threat against Riverwood High School. Motorola radio replacements, always keeping the best updated radios. Axon does the body worn cameras, that's VWC Taser and Fusus. I think everybody here went through the little Fusus demonstration with the cameras and everything. Fusus was a company out of Peachtree Corners, and they have been bought out by Axon. So Axon is now a conglomerate of all these. Taser is not their biggest revenue source now. It's the body worn cameras and the storage of the video. They're even getting now into cameras for service industry workers.
So Chief, this is $926,000 over what we are already paying.
No,
This
that's
is
the new
total
number.
That's the new.
How much has it been?
We're at 500. How much on Exxon? I believe it's around 500,000. So it's a big
an
increase.
Of 80%.
Yeah, it's a huge increase this year.
Do you know the number, Ron?
I don't, but Fusus was 100,000 alone, and that's included in that 926.
Tony's
We're
pulling
saying-
it up.
Increase in vehicle repair and maintenance, that's, cost of living is just going up. And of course, getting your vehicle repaired or maintained. I know I changed the oil on my personal car not too long ago, and it was like $125 to change the oil on my Subaru. So anyway, we're asking for an increase in staffing for 2 patrol officers, 1 sergeant, GCIC specialist, which is civilian, and a civilian property and evidence clerk. We have a part-time one now out of Johns Creek Police Department, but to transfer that position to a full-time civilian.
I thought we used volunteers for some of these positions.
No, none of those you can use volunteers because of state law and GCIC rules, and especially property and evidence.
That GCIC specialist will also be cross-trained to help with open records requests, which is another change that we're making so that we have, if somebody's out on sick leave or vacation, that way we'll be able to respond to those requests as quickly as possible.
So you're gonna actually hire a sergeant instead of promoting someone from?
No, we will promote within. It's just funded for the sergeant's
You
position
got to create a
Okay.
position.
Okay.
that we always promote from within. Yeah, if you don't, I've never understood these police departments that always hire from the outside, because who wants to work there? There's no opportunity for growth. I'm not gonna work a place I can't get promoted.
So is anybody doing this open records request differently than we're doing it? Is that somebody else doing this better that we could learn from and maybe figure out how to streamline us?
Sure. I think every city is trying to figure out the most efficient way to tackle open records requests. So, I don't know, we can always look around to see if there are better practices. I collaborate a lot with some of our regional clerks to see what they're doing.
Everybody's dealing with the same deal problem at this point.
And the issue for us is the volume. So when I go to Georgia City County Management Association meetings and I talk to other managers, they're getting nowhere near the volume that we do. Theirs are maybe, 5 a month. And that's simply not the case.
Retracting them somehow.
Well, we sit at, 400 and 285. You have a lot of requests for accident reports. A lot of requests for police incident. Well, you guys know, we just talked about the
We
police.
had
numbers.
requests for the bear that got hit this morning.
Saw that.
A bear, I missed that one.
You missed the
Bear.
bear was
By your
on
house, by your house.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought you'd been bear hunting.
What do you mean? Tastes like chicken.
Bear steaks.
It does, I've been bear.
So does the,
And we are working to identify ways people can self-service when they're looking for records from the department. So when you see websites being built out, that's an effort to create self-service opportunities. We're always looking.
And
for
what kind of question did you get about the bear? Like what kind of record requests did you get about
a
that?
copy of the incident report. Are there any
Body cam fitted.
videos associated with the event report, the CAD report, the 911 call?
What happened to them?
Wandered out in the road. It was reported over in Dunwoody, running through some neighborhoods, and somehow went west, went over the wall, got on 400, struck my car. Which it's unusual here, but in the state of North Carolina, I think the last report I saw that every year there's over 50 bear struck and killed in the state of North Carolina.
We get a lot of deer incidents, don't we? Yeah.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah.
We get a lot, especially October, November, December, during the rut. So anyway, that's my last line. As always, thank you all for the support.
Police ammunition, 125,000. Is that up a lot?
No, that's the same amount as last year.
Same amount as last year.
And Councilman, to your question about Axon, last year we did pay 500,000, 498,000 and some change to Axon for taser and body worn cameras. This was another 100,000, so it was 600. But this year the combined amount is 926.13.
It's still up though. That's
It's-
50%.
It's a big increase.
and it's because they're going up,
Well,
not
they're buying everything and they're going up.
they're. It's one of those.
So they're the only game down.
They are.
Primarily.
Okay. Any other
Thanks.
questions for Chief DeSimone?
All right. Thank you all for your support. As always.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks to your whole team.
All right, Chief Sanders is going to come up next.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The fire department give you an update on the last year. As you notice here, our call volume for total calls was 13,038 calls. Our fire response to EMS calls was 5,050. AMR, the ambulance service calls within the city of Sandy Springs, 11,941. And false alarms, 1491. Our goal here, as I've shared with you over the last couple of years, and we've seen a decrease in the call volumes somewhat, but our goal is through the paramedicine program, through the enhancements that we're doing with AMR. We also have a web-based telehealth that's owned by physicians. It will be coming, give you more information about that in a month or so. It will actually work with Chatcom, where our paramedicine program, where we have people that use the system a lot in non-emergency, but really doesn't need an ambulance. Our goal is to extract those calls out of that, because that's what's really compromising and burdening the ambulance response. We hope to reduce that 11,941 calls over the next couple of years by as much as 3,000 calls. And we're hoping that we can see that through better education, through our paramedicine program, and other agencies that have implemented it, especially the telehealth with this doctor's program, and being able to transition the caller to that has really made a significant difference. Our response times, average response time, the anomaly was there was very little traffic on our highways during 2021 with COVID. And we're back up, but we still, I'm very proud to just be able to say an average response time for 7 minutes and 9 seconds in the city of Sandy Springs. Some of the enhancements that you have approved the preemption, working with Marty and his group, being able to utilize the preemption software in our trucks through GPS, communicating with those intersection lights 2,500 feet before they ever get to that intersection. Those lights turn green, allowing the units to get to the scene a lot quicker. And those are on in all of our emergency vehicles, ambulances, as well as fire apparatus. Our response times here by station, I will say this in speaking more of the collective distributor lanes that we are experiencing, and we did have a lot of dialogue with GDOT prior to the construction beginning. They didn't communicate with us until after the design. And at that time, we in Sandy Springs made a strong recommendation to use colored coding signs to help with direction and for the victims that are on the scene that have been involved in the accidents. Oftentimes, they're very disoriented where they're at. And color coding signs and lanes would really help us being able to know that, because we do see like Station 3 that's over off of Raider Drive. It responds to a lot of calls on 400. We get a lot of 285, and to get on the the right lane, they have to go somewhat several miles out of the opposite direction just to get on that exit lane. So it has really impacted our response time with accidents, with injuries on these on our 285 and 400. Station 5, the number there, that is response is not only in right now, it's responding out of the Roswell Fire Station on Holcomb Bridge, runs a lot of calls into the mansions there on River Edge Parkway, but it's also the calls that it's responding to in the city of Roswell. And so we're looking forward to that station opening in the next few months, being able to really focus in on our service and what it can provide there in the northeastern part of the city. Cardiac arrest, we still have a cardiac save around 10%. If you notice, we started tracking this some years ago, looking at the bystanders CPR in progress. That's what the yellow is. We do have a better outcome when the patient that goes into cardiac arrest, if there's a bystander that has been trained in CPR. I was good, pleased to see that our numbers are actually coming down. We're post the pandemic, post the respiratory illnesses that we were experiencing and people delaying going and getting treatment. So we did have a significant increase during the latter part of COVID with cardiac arrest, but we are still around 10% on the cardiac saves. We started tracking this, and what has been good for us here in Sandy Springs, we've been able to really working with I'm very proud to say I believe Sandy Springs has the best employees in our GIS department in the world. They're phenomenal. Bridget and her team does a tremendous job, and I just always pleased of how she helps and supports the fire department. And because we really try to allow our data to give us a good picture of where we are. Are we making a difference? Are we putting our future fire stations in the right locations to minimize the response times? And here we see that this is the fire incidences in 2022. And then when you go to 2023, these are still the fire incidences where you see the more enhanced heat map indicators, or where we've had more than one fire in those areas. EMS calls, if you'll see how the over a period of a year. Now, we do have this all the way back since the inception of the city, and it is a very dramatic, the heat indicator for these areas just become much greater, showing that as we look forward to especially Station 4, which is in the city of Atlanta, once we are able to, bring that into the city. We really want to try to get it as close to where we can show those calls historically have taken place. And we believe continually will continue to be that way in years to come. And we need to get as close as we can to those areas to really make a difference. Most of our structure fires that we experience are on the north end of the city. Most of our structure fires are in our apartment complexes. That's why we, back in 2016, you approved an ordinance that helped us really enhance the fire safety, and we have made a difference. We don't have a lot of catastrophic burn-offs, and it's all due to the enforcement and the proactive approach that we took back in 2016 and continually working with community development code enforcement to ensuring that we're reducing that risk.
And that's all handled by Station 1?
Station 1 is the first unit on the scene. On structure fire, that you're going to get a minimum of 15 personnel, which is 5 pieces of apparatus on that scene.
Chief, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
I had a conversation with an apartment owner / manager. And the manager said their apartments were sprinkled, but we still required them to have intumescent paint. Is that accurate?
There was some that, because the attics were still, we get an attic fire, some of the older structures that we did, the newer ones we did not, but the older ones that we did require that to have that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Here, once again, we see the other calls, these other type incidences where there's just a number of those that can be where our service calls, where our units respond out to. You'd be amazed the number of gas leaks inside of structures that we get. It's unbelievable, really, how many we get a week where there is a gas leak inside of a structure. So a lot of the calls that you see here is just various calls other than EMS and other than our structure fire calls.
Gas leaks related to an
aging pipes, pilot lights not staying lit. I mean, it's just a host of calls that we get there. Construction work where the leak is inside the structure. We get a number of them every week. We get, Scott, 2 to 3 every week inside structures. Yeah. And oftentimes we get there because they're smelling something that smells like gas. We get there and it's not gas. So we get those as well. But it is something we respond to as quickly as we can because it can be very detrimental. Once again, as you see the continual map, as you see the progression there, it really shows the area where we really need to focus in on the future location of our fire station. The enhancements that we have for this year in the fire department, we have some software programs and that we've got to, we need to add to our risk reduction team, Jesse's team. Jesse's here today. There's some enhancements that we need to have there in the fire marshal's division. Site improvements for Station 1, Station 3. There's some maintenance that needs to take place there. Some concrete repairs that need to be made at those stations, as well as interior and exterior enhancements. The preemption every 5 years we have to make. This is the that I was speaking of, that we work with Marty's team, and every traffic signal we have a 5-year payment that we have to make there to maintain that program, and some maintenance program that we have for them. Some educational items that we've asked for. We are asking for the community paramedicine program. This will not be a firefighter. They will not be fighting fires. Their job will be focused in on reducing those calls and really addressing those users of the 911 system that really doesn't need to go to the hospital, but they need to be in contact with a physician and help educate that group. And we have a large number of people that will help reduce that burden on the ambulance service. And a systems data administrator working with IT. We have a number of softwares that we use in the fire department, very data driven, but also our technology working with the North Fulton radio system. with all of our portables that often have to be, each one has to be touched and reprogrammed, those kind of things. And keeping those up and running and efficiently running really requires us to have someone in that position full time. And fire equipment, this will be it's ancillary equipment like a fire hose, aging equipment that we have to replace on the truck, on our apparatus and in our stations. We need that. If you recall, the response unit that you approved a couple of months ago, it's a 12 to 15 month timeline on that unit. We do need the equipment to upfit that unit when it comes in, and that'll be the latter part of this upcoming fiscal year. And then every year we have a 10-year retirement date for all of the firefighting gear that firefighters wear. Each firefighter has 2 sets assigned to them, and they age out. And we've got that put out, aged out to where we have to average about $150,000 a year. We have to invest. Each set costs between $3,000 and $4,000 for that gear, and it lasts. We want it to last. We hope it lasts to 10 years through good maintenance, but oftentimes it's usually worn out as much as they utilize it within about 8 years. So we have to replace those sets. So our current full-time staff is 121 today. We're asking for the 2 enhancements would be 123. Then we have 4 part-timers, giving our total staffing of 127. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have for the fire department. Yes, ma'am.
The debt service for fire apparatus and equipment, which has I guess a pretty significant increase this year. Is that reflected in your budget or in another place?
It'll be in the capital budget.
It'll be in the capital budget. And the EMS subsidy,
That's in general no, that's an emergency management.
And our apparatus, keep in mind, when we place an order, we will be coming, if this is approved, we'll be coming to you sometime the next July, August, and request to order that apparatus. It takes up to 3 years for that apparatus to actually arrive. As I made a commitment to you, I know Councilman Paulson, you and I have spoken in depth. We have increased our longevity. We were replacing units when I got here every 5 to 6 years. Now we're up to 10 years on an engine, 12 to 15 on an aerial. And that is our goal. Furthering reducing those calls will help us, help the longevity of that apparatus. Yes, ma'am.
The difference between sending out the fire and EMS, is that the same thing, or is this different? EMS, you send out different equipment?
No, we send apparatus, all of our trucks, engines and ladders. We staff with at least 1 paramedic on those apparatus. They do not respond. Fire trucks, we do not respond on what's called an alpha call. It's only the ambulances that are responding to those. They may transport, they may not, but they respond. We're paying for a subsidy, so we utilize a lot less expensive sending that ambulance than it is, $1 million apparatus. But when it is a Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, an apparatus is sent on that EMS call. And I've always tried to educate folks in thinking in pairs of hands when our folks get on the scene. Think if you go into the hospital, you're in the emergency room. If we're doing work in a cardiac arrest, we've got one person doing ventilation, one person doing compression, one person starting an IV, one person, doing all the dictation of what's taking place, consoling so it usually takes 6 to 10, including the ambulance personnel, on a working cardiac arrest. And they may be on that scene for 30 to 40 minutes until they get spontaneous circulation. And that's what our protocol teaches them to do. They can do the same thing that an emergency room can do. We have all the intervention, all the advanced life support, drugs and equipment on those apparatus to be able to do that. Yes, sir.
We've talked about this a number of times, Chief. With Station 55 opening up in District 1, do you still have plans to eventually retire the old station on Roberts in favor of a newer station on the west side of 400 over by Morgan Falls Road? Is that still the plan?
That is a vision we have. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But you're also going to hear when Dave comes up that we have funding in the capital budget to do an assessment on doing an addition to Station 1.
Which
which would keep it alive.
Yes, that's exactly
I
right.
thought you needed one on the west side of 400. Is that-
So look at our, as I shared with them the data. In 2018, when we made that presentation to you, our fire data showed us that our response time would make a difference. Since then, the fire activity has changed more north. Where we have the most fires, where the current location is of Fire Station 1, is within 2 miles of those fires.
Apartments up there.
2.5 miles from Morgan Falls.
Oh, boy.
So if we really look at the change, we can always show the trend that it's always in that area historically. But if we really want to be efficient with time, we need to look at that. And then also potentially reduction in the cost of building a new facility versus assessing this facility and seeing if we could, make, a bit revisions to that building, remodel it, and get more longevity out of it. So we're looking at that and seeing what an assessment will reveal in that.
So it could be quicker to respond off of Roberts Drive.
That's exactly
We had a new station on Morgan Fall. Well, that's
exactly right. It's amazing to watch the data, how it changes, but to do the due diligence, in 2035, the data may change.
Chief, I'm not gonna be here in 2030. Or I'm gonna be hobbling around, so I probably need
I
to.
noticed on your map here, there's a tremendous amount of calls for different type of services in the, I guess that would be what, the southeast of the intersection of 400 and
285, 400,
285.
yes.
What's the problem in that area? There's such a tremendous amount of calls.
Just numerous accidents, calls to the buildings. We have, if you recall in that area, we have the high rise there with the residential high rise. We have a lot of calls. We've had a number of structure fires in those high rise buildings. And it's just, we have a lot of calls over in that area. The Meridian Mark, we respond there a couple of times a day.
Times a day?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Sure do. Any other questions? Thank you all.
Good job.
Thank you.
Next up is Dave.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll start off with the citywide facility conditions. That is, we hire a consultant to come in and assess all of our facilities. Last time we did that, it was a little over 6 years ago. That helps us to get our capital forecast for the next 10 years on repairs that will be needed in our facilities. That's our first request. Second request, sort of conjunction with that, that's an ADA compliance. That's really to help us understand our sidewalks and everything else with the facilities out there. We've never done one of those before. So we'd like to go ahead and do that this year. It's actually a requirement that we do it. Audio visual repairs. Some of our audio video equipment is starting to get dated, and I don't have a line item right now in my operational budget for that. So we'd like to go ahead and put that in there and be able to upgrade some of the, we take care of all the conference rooms and the bigger rooms in this building. Of course, in the other facilities too. Site improvements, that's one of my bigger line items. That carries, we need to buy the TerraPlast, which is it's an interlocking base that's going to go underneath the ice skating rink. We'll pull back the turf, and that helps us to protect the infill there so we don't get divots in the infill. This is unlike like a natural grass out here. We till that up, but it's very sensitive infill that if you put equipment on it and everything, it'll make large dents in it, and we had to go back and flatten it out. So this product will be installed underneath the ice skating rink. We'll be able to reuse it every year. Also in that 323,000 is doing a refresh on our Performing Arts Center green room, back of house where the stars stay and hang out before the shows. And we also want to put another marquee over on the William Payne's property, that old heritage sign. We're going to replace that with a nice marquee like we did out there on Roswell Road. The staffing increase, two of them are related directly towards the new police headquarters we're going to open up. One would be a refill at the beginning, or actually a bill at the beginning of this fiscal year.
get him over into the police headquarters to start working with commissioning. And that would actually be a promotion within. We have backfilled the position here at City Hall. The other position would be the mail clerk and dock master over at the new building. And that'll be sometime in March next year when we start opening up the building.
Do we not have one for our current?
We do have one here, yes.
We have one here, but not.
No, we don't have any staffing right now for headquarters. That's just, we'd have two people over there. One would be running, so our dock operations over there would be receiving everything for the police and court, distributing all the mail, managing the physical security contract and the security guards over there, monitoring the security systems. That would be their job over there. And then the third position would be, we want to add a position directly to support rec and parks in their older buildings, give them quality electrical, plumbing, mechanical type support facilities.
That's full-time.
Yeah, that's full-time position. A capital request, want to put aside 3 million for the new redevelopment here. That will give us the money to demo the 5 properties that we'd have to clear out of there and any kind of infrastructure we need part of that project, support of it. Cistern improvements, we're beginning to drain the cistern this week, and we're going to go down and assess it for the first time in 3 years. So there's going to be a clean out cost to that, replacing the pumps in there, and then this money also helps us to do a waterproofing liner inside the cistern, so we don't have to clean it every year. Hopefully it'll help us with the leaking in the cistern. Facility maintenance, this is my capital fund for facilities. What we're looking to do this year is in the tennis center, we have metal halide built lighting inside, so we're going to replace that with LED. Parking deck, we have a couple repairs on our new parking deck that we have to do this year. And the last one is a couple roofs. The Hammond Gym roof has got more leaks in it, and the fire station floor has got a leak in their roof, so we'll work on the roofs. $100,000 set aside for the firearms training facilities, the fire shooting range. That's so we can do a scoping study on the facility to understand exactly what it needs to be. Help Chief Diesmon out there promoting the donation for the facility. Get that project off. Fire Station 1, we already talked about that. That is to do some an assessment of the building, find out whether it can be a fire station or something else, where we put a fire station over on Morgan Falls site, and it gives us some design concepts to bring back to you guys next year for whatever that project needs to be. And lastly, I got $750,000 for Fire Station 4. That is to do the initial design of the building, and the construction will be part of next year's budget. I'm sorry, and I got one more. Abernathy Art Center. That is to because of the rise of prices. This is to help us to fully fund the modular art studio and the master site plan of that site. So we are currently at 15 people in our department. We'll take us up to 18 people with additional requests.
Hey, go over the City Springs District Improvement Demolition and Infrastructure.
I'll help him with that. So that additional funding that we are proposing to allocate in that line is in preparation for what we are going to get back from our preferred development partner. We know that there's going to be some additional streetscape improvements and other infrastructure that would not be related to what we would normally be contributing through abatement. So that is simply just to give us some money that will be available when we do have to do new sidewalks, any plazas, or road reconstruction.
Money that's going to be available but not spent right now.
That's right. That's basically a savings
It's
account.
just, okay, it's allocated.
Yep.
Okay.
But we've got to tear down some buildings.
We
Yeah,
do.
but we're not going to do that now. Are we?
We hope to be able to tear down and get started once we get the proposal or the revised documents back from the preferred development partner, but we won't be spending any of these funds until we come back to council with a full plan.
Okay.
The scoping study, won't include any sort of design. or anything like that?
It won't include design. It'll help us understand exactly how many lanes we need, what size of lanes we need.
Okay.
And
So
it helps,
that'll inform the
it helps us understand what the surrounding cities need too when we're out there soliciting for funds. We understand what they.
Can we talk a little more about the ADA compliance
Sure.
assessment? How often does that need to be done? You said it's required. How often?
I
Every
think
3
it's
years.
every 3 years.
So this starts the clock.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Can you just give me a better idea of what'll be included in that? We'll be looking at all of the.
I'm gonna ask Chris to fill you in on that. He's been working on our plan.
Please
That's not-
fill
that's not-
fill me in, Chris. Thank
So-
you.
So there's going to be two components to this. One is Dave's, which is focused on the buildings themselves. So this study will be looking at the sidewalks directly around the buildings, the parking for the buildings, doors, ramps, all sorts of things around the buildings themselves. There's another component to this ADA plan that we have to publish every 3 years, and that's our sidewalks. So Marty's group, Mitch specifically, during his pavement condition assessment, he scans the roadways for the condition of the pavement. We've learned that contractor also can scan the sidewalks for us while they're driving down the street. And that scan will tell us if we have sidewalks that are not compliant with ADA. So we're collecting all the sidewalk data through Mitch's group. Dave is going to be focused on the buildings immediately around and inside of them.
Okay. What about crosswalks?
That will be just picked up 2 ways, one with Mitch's scan work, and the other is with Kristen Westcott's group when they look at their intersection improvements projects. Our policy is that all new improvements that we do meet ADA standards. And what this is looking at, are things that we already own that don't meet standards so that we can put it on our list of priorities.
Okay. And so there will be a list that we can look at of.
This report will generate a list, and then we have a continuing list with those. The biggest thing Mitch deals with on our sidewalks is trip hazards.
Yeah.
And he has a huge program for that he just does it every year. So that's already baked into our program. We do that all the time. I think the last report he did this year, he found like 2,000 trip hazards that are being addressed by grinding those sidewalk lips and things like that.
2,000?
2,000.
2,000.
Oh,
Sir, we have a lot of sidewalks.
well, we have a lot of
Sidewalks and tree roots and everything else.
Yeah.
So
I can tell you how I don't know.
sidewalks are not static. They continue to move. Unfortunately.
Hey, can you tell us what you said about the tennis center?
Yeah, sure. That's, during our last assessment that we did, it was identified that we have metal, halide lighting in there inside the building. So we're gonna replace that with LED lighting, much more efficient.
And would you go over the Station 4 and 3-story office building? Is that at Station 4, that's the one in the city of Atlanta. You're talking about putting a 3-story office building there?
No. I'll help with that one. This is to, once we identify a location to move Station 4 to, we also are in need of a permanent home for Chatcom. And if we are going to undertake a project that will require construction, we would like to go ahead and put a permanent home for Chatcom there as well as
Okay,
potentially.
combine it with Station
Yes,
4
that's exactly right.
and move
move it
Station 4 into the
into the
city.
city. Yes, sir.
So you're just stashing money for that.
That's exactly, this is to get started once we identify the location.
Then I have a question about where is it covered, maybe not on this page, but somewhere else, the updates that are needed for, the heritage property, the band shell, around the springs, that's, the boardwalk, it's been in disrepair for some.
We are about to do the boardwalk.
Okay.
We've already released a contractor to do that. You should be starting in the next couple of weeks. And then we're actually placing the pressure treated lumber with the Trek wood. So that'll last us
So what
much
about the area
longer.
around the spring area? Are we gonna, we had some plans, I thought, to do that.
We have some funds in the current CIP for the FY24 budget, so staff is working on what that will look like. That is not currently plotted in 25 to receive additional funding because we still have to do the work to determine what needs to be done there. We were trying to do that at the same time as the main development so that you wouldn't have all kinds of construction happening different times over there.
Want to make sure we don't.
Oh, we're not forgetting it.
Something.
No, we're not forgetting it.
Are we still gonna get some wayfinding? I see that there's fiscal year 25, there's some funding for wayfinding, but just on the 5-year plan.
So the last part of the wayfinding is directional wayfinding. We haven't really started that yet because we're waiting to find out exactly what's going on here in the downtown district before we start making a bunch of signage. So we just, the last sign we have that we're working on is the one down in Windsor Parkway area. So that's our last.
What's going on there?
one. We're trying to find the right spot.
Oh, I thought you had done one.
Well, we did with the Puppy Haven as part of last year's proposal.
But then you
Now-
talk
now
about
we're
a new
looking-
one by
now we're looking-
Walgreens.
So we're working with Walgreens right now to get their approval. But we're pretty close with that.
Dave, I thought we funded a master plan for the Abernathy Art Center last year. Didn't we put money towards a
We did.
master plan?
It wasn't enough. So
Did we ever even see it?
no, the master plan hasn't been done yet. This is all related to the modular buildings that we're putting in there and the increase in cost for that,
That
So-
was, or this is?
both. So the 250 is to give us, I hate to put it this way, but a cushion so that we'll have enough money to do all of it, as well as Burdette Park. So the plantings that will be on that triangle between Burdette Road and Johnson Ferry.
All right, but we've been talking about what to do with that 5 acres for a number of years. It'd be nice to actually have a plan that everybody gets a weigh in on.
We are going to kick off that planning process. Remember, the modular buildings were going to be our temporary measures that
I got it, yep.
continue. And then once we get that in, we would kick off this master plan process for what needs to go there long
That's
term.
what this is.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dave, what did you say about Walgreens? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I really don't want to talk about that, but we've been working with Walgreens that there's a piece of property, forget the name of the road there, Meadowbrook, is it?
Meadowbrook.
Yeah.
Meadowbrook. On the corner right there at Walgreens, that's our actual city limit. That's where we want to put the sign at, our last monument sign.
Oh, okay, got it, okay.
We're not buying Walgreens.
No.
No, no, just- Got it.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Dave. Marty is up next for Public Works.
Mayor and council, good afternoon. For our budget enhancements, request for this year. First, an increase in technical services. You heard Chief Sanders reference some of the glance units supporting emergency vehicle preemption on his side of the house. Well, on our side as well, we've got glance units deployed throughout the city, a significant number. And on a 5-year license agreement or a cellular service plan, for instance, that there's a significant increase in the cost this year because we're at the 5-year anniversary for renewing the plan with plans for that. What's in technical services beyond that is all of the other integration software and control software that makes our traffic signal systems go throughout the city. And there's a host of them. And so they all have subject price increases, and then some of them as well have these periodic renewal of charges that go along with the implementation of a system. Electricity increase with streetlights reflect both rate and number of streetlights in our annual bill we pay Georgia Power. We're going to ask for your help with 2 staff positions this particular fiscal year. The first of those are traffic signal engineer. If you compare the traffic signal systems for the city in 2009 to current day systems, we've had significant increases. Maybe not the number of signalized intersections increasing that much. I think 119 to say 132 now in terms of signalized incidents. But everything else has changed since then. And the workload associated with managing now a traffic management center has changed significantly over time as well. Deployed radar speed feedback signs, traffic signal flashers, excuse me just a moment. Our fiber optic network that the TMC manages in the city has gone from 22 miles to now 43 miles of fiber optic system across the city. Vehicle preemption and roadside devices, those alone, 160 devices deployed across the city. School zone beacons, another 29 there. Another significant technology change since 2009 is now we have some, get the number right, 116 closed circuit television cameras monitoring across the network now, where it was a dozen or so, 2009. So a significant workload increase in supporting the technology behind the traffic management center. So we're looking for a traffic signal engineer to help with the studies, the support to the traffic management center in that regard. Utility operations coordinator. You supported us last year with a budget increase to bring on a service contract for the staking support required with a state mandated locates on our city systems. Again, those traffic management system throughout the city. We need to locate those as contractors, whoever might be working in the area, but as well our city-owned lighting systems that we own as well. We tried initial approach with contractor-only approach. We found that the workload, we're probably going to be upwards of 3,000 permits or better this year, locate permits that we're now managing. A workload not accurately or well estimated by staff when they first tried to field this state mandated requirement for utility locates of our city administered and city owned systems. So we're asking for your support there as well with a utility operations coordinator who would in part then assist our utilities management section, who, and I think many of you have had citizens request support with a utility on status of a permit, the status of a repair or whatever, are already pretty task saturated with trying to manage those utility outreach efforts. So this person can help with that effort as well. We look to them to be a combination of office and field position here to assist with that program.
Does that include Atlanta Water?
It's
part of the utility operations?
Yes, sir, it certainly does. And so, as you might be aware, we maintain a list of both outstanding repairs that have been identified across the city, as well as after that repair is made, the other list we keep, and we keep it updated on a weekly basis and communicate to Atlanta Water, the pending restorations that go along with make that repair work, now put everything back together again, be it sidewalk, landscaping, whatever goes with that. So there's a significant coordination load along with that, as well as the occasional utility bill problem, whatever the other case that our folks may be asked to help investigate and reconcile with the city of Atlanta. So on our capital request for this year, steady state request, again, we've had relatively solid and steady support in our request for traffic calming. We have been in the ability, we have had the ability to implement some traffic calming projects every year in accordance with our traffic calming policies. We're asking this year that it's time to take on a transportation master plan update. If you'll recollect when we did the last one, and that was some 5 years ago, you asked a question at the time in the part of the pandemic. Has everything changed? And is this study going to be valid 10 years, 2 years from now? Well, fair enough question as well, in anticipation of another round of T-SPLOST vote considerations coming up in 2026. Now's a good time to conduct a transportation master plan study, do the public outreach, understand what's on our citizens' minds as well as in our plans, et cetera, so that we can propose a transportation master plan moving forward.
What's the date on the current one we're operating off of?
It is
It was
a 2020 study. If you recollect, we completed the transportation master plan, launched right into building the program for T-SPLOST 2021 vote. So, and we had significant public feedback, even though it was the pandemic, as a part of transportation master plan, and that seemed to adequately augment the development of the T-SPLOST plan, if you recollect. So that's what we used as the foundation for the 2021 T-SPLOST plan. Sandy Springs final inspection of Transform 285-400. Not everything was done with North Perimeter Contractors, the partnership team that's building 285-400, is necessarily GDOT owned when it's all said and done. That work zone extends onto Glen Ridge, onto Peachtree, Dunwoody, et cetera, throughout the city. So 11 or better of our intersections directly impacted by that project, modified, altered, whatever the case is. We've got new and different infrastructure from on our local streets as a result of the project now. So the thought here in our proposal here is that this would be our bucket to fund traffic signal inspections with third-party inspectors, stormwater sewer inspections, camera the pipes, whatever the case might be, check our pavements, check the things that are important to us as we then pick up and then further manage those assets that have been changed and altered within our infrastructure at the end of this project.
And Georgia DOT is not paying for this?
They're inspecting, okay? They're inspecting, they've got their oversight, but at the end of the day, there is a point in time where the infrastructure that's in the work zone right now that the contractor's been modifying becomes our infrastructure again. And then we have the burden from there out to maintain, repair, and operate that infrastructure. So especially when you look at the cost for repairs at traffic signal cabinets, fiber optic lines, et cetera, we think it's probably money well spent.
So this is preemptive, that we're checking to make sure
Yes, sir.
that they do it, so it's not gonna cost us more money down the road.
Exactly.
And if it needs to be modified, it's
We can
modified. at their
identify it
expense.
now. Here's the detailed inspection. Here's what still doesn't work right.
Kind of like our punch list.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, so we give them what we want, and they have to take care of it then.
Yeah, we'll set that expectation.
And that's $250,000.
It could be less. We're looking at multiple sources, multiple different vendors that would provide reports for us. So this wouldn't be a single source. Stormwater would go hire their camera folks that they use already. Traffic engineering would get our on-call traffic services folks that we have on call to do that. And as well, we use on-call materials testing and services. And we would go to those vendors to inspect different materials, et cetera, on the job site where we may have some questions about the integrity. Surface inspections may not bear out for us.
So with the transportation, I just want to go back for a second. The Safe Streets for All resources or the grant that we received for planning, what's the relationship between that and the transportation master plan?
Safe Streets for All is a very specific focus on that important thing that I think Chief DeSimone talked about a little bit ago, and that's accident rate reduction. Assess the city for accidents, find those areas through all means. It might be public works, it might be police measures, fire measures, communications measures, whatever the case might be, to target and reduce vehicle accidents across the city. Transportation master plan, safety is certainly an element within the transportation master plan, but were this, say, 10 years ago, and we were looking at priorities for the city, I don't know that safety would have been forefront as much as, say, traffic efficiency at our intersections where we were in the heat of a lot of commute into and out of perimeter, and some of the projects that we've since rendered to improve traffic intersection efficiency throughout the city hadn't come to fruition yet. So that's specific to safety. It will inform potentially the transportation master plan as it produces plans as well. And then along with the Safe Streets for All, we talk about that in more detail in our quarterly updates as well, Dr. Kelly. But it will help create an implementation plan that we would then be eligible to seek fund assistance for out of that Safe Streets for All plan that we create. So it creates yet another way to pursue funding avenues to make improvements here within the city.
And so then I assume the Roswell Rural Access Management plan that we came up with, that'll also.
It considers that as
well as the
investment.
safety.
So many of the plans, it will review the status of the most recently and some of the older outstanding plans and try to compile those needs into a prioritized recommendation for a future program. All right. Let's see, PMC video wall replacement, Vintage about 2018, moved over here with new City Hall. That technology ages quickly. In this case, those 12 major monitors inside the TMC are now showing their age. They're out of warranty. Some of the systems are beginning to degrade. So this is the opportunity, or this is the right time now to upgrade and replace those aged systems there. Intersection and operational improvements. This is the home within this program for our traffic engineering studies and then implementation as funds allow within that program to implement the findings of those traffic engineering studies. So lots of requests across the city for, can you make this, or we find them via study and analysis. Can you make this safer here, whatever the case might be, within this, traffic, the intersection and operations program, that assessment there. TMC fiber program. We've just about doubled fiber network across the city. This maintains and extends the fiber network within the city. So if we do get strikes, damage, et cetera, across the fiber network. As well, in companionship with this project or this program, we have some T-SPLOST funded projects to specifically improve areas within the fiber program within the city. Traffic management program directly related to the TMC, upgrades to traffic signal systems, upgrades to integration within the traffic signal systems across the city. Guardrail replacement program.
Are all of our signalization in the city now connected?
Not entirely yet, no. So, and that's where the fiber network, thank you, reaches out to bring those in. We've got, for instance, one of our significant T-SPLOST projects right now is Ring A over this area. Then we've got another extension out near fire station near Riverwood, et cetera, that we're trying to pick up some signals, et cetera.
How many signals do we have in the city?
That number, I have that right here, so I should have it on the.
Managed by the TMC is 132.
There, yes, ma'am. There you go.
And we have a total of 160?
132 managed by the TMC, plus there are, we also pick up management of another 4 systems inside City of Atlanta. Because of, correct, because of the way that ATMS1 was structured when we first implemented ATMS. So
we only have about 30 or so that are not connected?
Mostly West End, and we're trying to pick that up with Interstate North, around the Interstate North end of the city. Plus, we've got connectivity out in the Panhandle. We need to extend out yet. We don't have fiber throughout the Panhandle yet, so.
We'll get the total number and let y'all know that.
No, I was just wondering.
Okay.
So, and for instance, and you might recollect this, we don't have fiber connectivity right now to Peachtree, Dunwoody, and Windsor.
Oh, I thought we got that.
We're bringing that. We're bringing that. That project is underway right now. It's in active construction to bring fiber connectivity, the big L, down Windsor Parkway, to loop back up Peachtree, Dunwoody, and pick that intersection up, plus all the other intersections along Windsor, then back up Peachtree, Dunwoody. We don't have connectivity to those right now. That L project that's underway right now will ultimately connect all of those.
Thank you.
Some steady state, again, relatively numbers, guardrail replacement, that's about 5 guardrails throughout the city this future year. City beautification program. In this case, wildflowers on Georgia, both 285 and 400 in areas that we can then get again into work. Sidewalk cleaning, I think you've seen the results of the contract. We had really good pricing this year on that. So I think he's on Johnson Ferry this week, as a matter of fact, trying to take care of sidewalks there. As well as a little bit of buffer to support, again, the Burdette Park over near the Abernathy Arts Center. Stormwater capital improvements, $4.25 million to support stormwater capital. pretty much fully executed the entirety of our program this year at 3+ million. We're ready to go for more. We'll have a couple of projects within this program that are ready to let as quickly as we turn the corner on the fiscal year this year. We're ready to go and get out on the street and award as we speak today.
Marty, what would you estimate? I mean, I know we're spending no small amount on stormwater, but my guess is that the system is deteriorating faster than we're repairing, making upgrades and improvements. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, we're reactive right now. We're in the position.
When we have a failure, we fix it, but we're not doing anything proactively.
We don't have the ability to forecast, and certainly not with the budgets we've had to date, make future looking repairs. It's about time to fix this one. It's at that.
We run around sticking our fingers in stormwater dikes to make worse things can happen.
And I'll give stormwater staff credit, great credit. They've explored and they work with industry. They've got good technologies they're using to extend the life of these old systems, especially corrugated metal pipe systems throughout. Textile liners, whatever, cementitious liners, whatever the case is, to extend the life of those systems. But they're finding the problems as they appear right now. And it's not for lack of inspection of the system. Our folks have requirements under several different guidelines to inspect these systems regularly. MS4, for instance, requires every piece of the system be inspected on a 5-year cycle. So they're finding those things and they're inspecting the system. And they're doing a good job, I'd say, on the maintenance of those facilities that we have to maintain, this city-owned, city-operated detention ponds, et cetera. But yes, sir, it's a reactive process we have right now. As the break occurs, or as we see the break about to occur, that's what gets priority in the system here.
So a year ago, we talked about the idea, I think we talked about the idea of similar to pavement management systems, doing a stormwater structure management system where we grade every head wall, every stormwater line and in the city and try to get an idea what the overall grade of our system, age, grade, whatever. There's got to be a way to try to quantify this. So just like with pavement management, we can look and see if our grade, if our overall grade for stormwater is X, 62%, and we spend X amount of dollars, we can get it up to 70%. But the collection of the base infrastructure and the grading of these is still not been captured. And we talked about at one point, if you remember, at one point we had one of these, the study that was done by CH. I know it sounds like it was pretty cursory. Did we ever even find that study? And
Yeah.
and whatever happened with that whole concept? Because that would keep us from being reactive, because then we would know.
What we're currently doing is benchmarking some of the neighboring communities, municipal system assessments. What did they go through? How did they do it? How did they get the data they need?
To do this, what I'm talking about.
To do what you're talking. So we're at the point now, when we talked earlier this year in council retreat, for instance, we're benchmarking, we're trying to establish some scopes for what studies like that would look like, what they would cost, level of effort involved to put us forward toward that effort. Our stormwater team is working on this now.
Well, I submit to you, we're spending enough money on stormwater and have been, that it'd be really nice to be able to get our arms around this and be able to predict a little better what's coming and what needs to be fixed more critically than the next one needs to be fixed. Because if you can line it in place before the thing falls apart, that's 20% of the cost of having to redo the whole thing, as you're obviously aware. So
yes.
Is the problem?
I would encourage us to do this.
Is the problem with the stormwater that it's all underground? And we can't, the roads, of course, we have a van that drives on the roads and takes pictures of the roads and grades it. Stormwater is all underground. And then I noticed, because a lot of this is in my district on this because it's the older area of the city. And then a lot of times when we have a problem, we don't know who's responsible. Is it the homeowner? Is it the county? Is it the city? And it's just.
We've been looking at this stuff for 19 years, David.
Huh?
We've been looking at this for 19 years.
I know.
We should have a pretty darn good idea where the head walls are, and which ones we own, where the stormwater lines are, and how big they are, and how bad or good they are. You ought to be able to put our arms around this, Marty.
Yeah,
It seems to me.
We have the basics on our infrastructure. We know where the head walls are. We regularly and routinely, as somebody brings up an issue, whatever, we can pull plats, we'll pull title searches too to see whatever it, so we'll do a fairly exhaustive research. The data and the detail that would be really good to have in a database just isn't there right now. The kind of relation.
Can we get it?
That's the goal. That's the goal, to ultimately get that data.
Councilman, if I could offer, I heard you do a correlation to our pavement scanning.
Right.
Is pavement degrades at a fairly predictable rate. And as you said, it's above ground, you can see it.
Right.
Stormwater, we could assess a pipe this month. And then in 6 months, we could have a huge rainstorm that affects that pipe in that system and blows it out unpredictable. Or a small problem that wasn't visible could unravel and cause a bigger issue. So stormwater's deterioration is not as linear as asphalt. That's another challenge our team deals with. They can go assess something and then there could be a bigger problem with it 6 months down the road that could not be visually seen. If they sold x-ray goggles that I could ask you guys to purchase for our team to use, that would be great. We'd propose that, but that's the challenge they have with stormwater versus an asset like asphalt or concrete sidewalk.
And yes, to the underground portion, I mean, there's the platted, here's what was built back in the day. We've got a good record of that. We've seen it, checked it by GS. While we're out there, though, we'll often find that over time, and not just last week, somebody just the system's been altered, it's been extended, it's been improved. Things have been added to it, whatever the case might be, is folks wanted a little more side yard or a little more backyard, whatever the case. And that's happened throughout the city. So we've got a system that's changed and morphed over time as well, that trying to capture data on.
Well, it's very complex and complicated, and that was my whole point, is that we need to take a systemic look at stormwater over the next few years. I'm not saying we need to do it now, but it's something we need to begin to incorporate into our capital program. And then we're going to have to look at some kind of funding source to make sure that we correct it, because there's nothing worse than a stormwater system going bad, and it can create enormous amount of damage, both to public and private property if not managed properly. We just need, we're gonna have to get our arms around, as John said, we're gonna have to get our arms around this going forward. Maybe can't do it this fiscal year, but it's something we need to put into our long-term capital assessments and develop some kind of mechanism for dealing with it.
So on a related program, I could skip the pavement management. We're paving somewhere around 21.1 miles this year. This is the last year in our 3-year round of PCI assessments. The next one will get reported to you later this year with the upcoming fiscal year's paving programs, so next 3 years programs associated with that. This budget here at 6.75 million anticipates about 16 plus miles of paving.
Does this include the LMIG money, or is this just our money?
Stars.
Stars. So LMIG goes on top of it.
Yes, sir. Last year's distribution before the LMIG supplemental was right at $1 million, just a little over $1 million. That's what we anticipate right now until it goes through the formula and the allocation for this year tells us what our 25 monies will be. So
when are we getting the grade on our pavement management? What's the score on our pavement management?
we expect to get
We're doing it this year, weren't we? This
Yeah.
spring?
yes, sir. We'll bring it probably in about 2 months. We're pulling in the last couple of reports to bring to you so that we can, and they've already started working on, the consultant started working on the recommended list for 25. So this is just comments, review, let's get it right, let's get it balanced. So we've given them a budgeting bogey to work by against here, as said that. And I think they're somewhere around a score of 81. PCI is what we had on the average for last year. We'll see how the target goes for this year, but I think we'll be in the same neighborhood, trying to maintain PCI at about that number. Have more to talk to you about what you had about 2 months stuff in the council meeting. And then on sidewalk program, thank you for your help with and your support with allowing us to move T-Splosh monies and other kinds of monies around so that we could ultimately fully fund and then award TS 192. If you recollect, when we made those program shifts though, we moved one large sidewalk project, Brandon Mill sidewalk, from T-Splosh 2016 forward to T-Splosh 2021. Along with that move came a hole of about $750,000 to fully fund that project as we move it into construction. So we're asking for $750,000 here against sidewalk program to fund that deficit that still remain with the Brandon Mill sidewalk, because we ready that project to put it out for construction, get ready. And that comes not at the expense of any of the other active sidewalk projects in the program. So that's why we're asking $750,000 at this point to make everything whole as a result of current construction cost estimates as we continue to advance the sidewalk program under both T-Splosh 2016 and 2020. All right, with that, I think I've covered position increases, some budget enhancements, and specific capital requests. Did I miss anything, or is there anything that you'd like?
A question I have is, for some of these, the ones that are kind of currently, even in this fiscal year, are in existence, are any of them projected to have a surplus this fiscal year? I mean, do we know?
For any of the capital programs?
For any of those programs, yeah, the programs that are currently,
No, ma'am. No. So what you've asked the question a different way. Usually what I'll bring to you is, here's where I think we're going to be short and I'm going to need some help finishing the project this year. So I always look for deficits, but none currently. As we do identify surpluses, we'll make recommendations for budget adjustments and either surrender the money back to capital contingency or reallocate to another project that does have a deficit. So, but none at this time. We're not at the point yet. As you recollect, with both 191 and 192, we needed help to fully award those and get those projects underway not long ago. So
I guess I'm wondering, like, for example, the guardrail replacement program, do we fully expect to spend
Anything that's remaining in those lines would remain in those lines. And so these would just be additional appropriations to continue work on those projects. So they don't lapse because it's capital funds.
Okay.
So we still whittle away at guardrails throughout the city, just on account with the other projects that we already have underway. So.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Brent from Recreation and Parks.
Evening. First up are just some program numbers. These are actually the park programs that city staff run. As you can see, this past year at the end of December, we were at 3,602 participants. So seeing a slight increase over last year of our internal programs. These are our contract programs. These are the folks that we do a percentage share with to come in off of classes for us. They either do registration and pay us revenue, or we take a percentage of their class participation revenue. Total 71,424 in those programs. And then just year over year, you can see we're tracking at 3,534 for this year to date, knowing that we're going to exceed last year's numbers because we're in spring. So all of our baseball programs, athletic programs outside, all the typical things you see in our parks going into spring and summer. So we expect to see a pretty good increase in our numbers overall. And going into our budget request, the first enhancement is our Time Clock Plus. That is a software that we can use to schedule our part-time staff. We have a multitude of part-time staff, from our park ambassadors to our programming staff. But this will just help us communicate directly with them and schedule them into programs. Right now it's done through text messaging and calling. And so this will help us get a better idea of who can work and when and how they're working. We're seeing an increase in program supplies. We're seeing a pretty big increase in program materials from jerseys to umpire fees. We're instituting new programs going into the new year. So we saw a pretty significant increase in that cost. We're requesting some small tools and equipment. The swivel dump truck helps us move material into the trails, onto our soft surface trails, mulch and things like that. Our dingo stump grinder will help us remove trip hazards, stumps out in the ground on our trails. And also when we have pine beetles, we cut a tree down, we need to get the stump out of there too. So that'll help us remove any invasive species in our tree stumps. And the scissor lift, we do a lot of gutter cleaning, graffiti removal, light changing, all of this thing. We have to rent a scissor lift, so by having one, we can expedite those repairs. So that's what that request is for. Going into the capital, trail segment 2C design, we're requesting $303,000. That was the number given us to us by the Path Foundation, the original planning and master planning of that. Abernathy South Greenway, that $500,000 is for the construction documents and design of the middle part of that, primarily stormwater infrastructure and trail enhancements. Morgan, sorry.
Just a question.
Sure.
Huh? I thought we already approved funding for that center section. So what do we already approve versus what this is going? Is this the next step of that?
Right. So we've done the concept design.
Yeah.
The budget for that project is $4 million. We have about $3.5 million with a 319H grant for the rest. That we've expended a certain portion of that, it's $500,000 makes the budget whole for construction also. So with the design we've done to date with the concepts, this will cover the cost of the construction documents and still keep it funded for construction. The Morgan Falls Athletic Complex design and permitting, again, that's the continuation of those improvements out there. It includes upper lower field plaza design, turfing field 8 and 9 to 10, the existing football field. And primarily what we're working on right now is a holistic approach to stormwater out there. With all of these improvements and hardscapes, we haven't modeled what the potential detention needs to be for that park, especially with artificial turf. So we really need to get out there and decide what the total coverage is going to be and what we're going to need to facilitate all that stormwater that's going to come.
So is this analogous to the 1.5 million that we put towards improvements last year? So this represents a decrease.
Yeah, so there.
It's this year's, but this year's.
Right, to increase those efforts. I mean, just a turf field is going to be $1 million. So to keep the design and then construction cost available as we get the construction documents to do the next phase. Unfortunately, it's not building like a new park where you can just go in and do it all at once. We have to piecemeal it around the programming that's out there with the Sandy Springs Youth Sports.
So when we turf a field, is that considered a hardscape?
Unfortunately, yes, we don't get, it's not considered a pervious surface. You do get detention off of it because it percolates through the membrane, but unfortunately EPD does not calculate it as a pervious surface.
Ginger, why is that?
Sorry. He was like this in my ear. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. People bugging.
They're causing disruption.
The question is, why is artificial turf considered impervious? It's not impervious.
It depends on how it's installed. So there's several layers.
I got it.
If it's done to the detail that we prescribe, then it can be considered pervious material, but most often these trails aren't installed that way. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't want us creating a problem. We're improving the field. We're killing ourselves because we're creating more stormwater runoff. That's silly. We can figure that out.
It's all about flow rate. You know, if you have a napping service and percolation through Georgia clay is much slower than what you get in a membrane of an artificial turf. So you have to detain that at a certain capacity for the outfall structure. So you have to model all that, size the detention for that facility, which is different than grass. So it's
Okay.
It's basically green light, red light of when the water is released from the site.
Okay.
So we'll continue that. And then Old Riverside Park, 2.5 million. That's to fully fund the construction. We have the $6 million cost for that park. There's $3.5 million for construction already there from previous year's impact fees. So this will finish the wrap up the cost of construction for that. We're about 50% construction document right now on that project. So we hope to let that construction bid this calendar year. Hammond Park improvements, that $70,000 is in addition to the roughly $60,000 we have currently in a capital fund for that park. What we hope to do with that is provide a bathroom facility off the round building. Currently, the only bathroom that we have there is the one down by the tennis pickleball courts. So people renting that facility, the pavilion there that don't have access to the indoors have to walk all the way down to the lower bathroom.
But there's a bathroom in the round.
There is, but oftentimes we'll have a rental boat. So you have to go in and interrupt one event. If you're renting the pavilion, you have to interrupt the activities in the round building. So fortunately, there's an existing bathroom that's a staff bathroom in the round building that's separate from the public restrooms. We think we can make an exterior access to that area, renovate that bathroom to a public restroom. So we're not building a new structure. We're actually going to integrate a public restroom into the round building.
So I wanted to ask about, since we're about to talk about those last two Morgan Falls bullet points, on the status of the dog park improvements and that funding.
It's coming. It's a ballot item.
All right, it's a ballot item, great. And then the 5-year CIP that was sort of appended to our budget last year had 3 million slated for the improvements to the athletic complex for the next 2 fiscal years. So what I'm curious about is how that's changed, at least in terms of for the next few years.
Sure. So I think we have like $1.3 million left of that for the improvements at Morgan Falls. We just did the shade structures, the netting, all those improvements that just wrapped up. So that was a big chunk of it. And there's certainly more than the 1.3 million we have in the budget that can be done out there. There's still the batting cage facility, the stormwater we mentioned, the turfing of the fields. It's a pretty big ticket item when you start adding it all together. So we're slowly just picking off those projects as get the design and can move forward. What makes sense in terms of greatest need for the park. We have some, as you can imagine, with it being the former landfill site, we have a lot of subgrade conditions that are troublesome when we start looking at deterioration of the ground out there. We've got a wall we've got to put in behind field 3 because of the erosion that's occurring out there. So there's some things that we need to do to shore up the park and get the stormwater and check.
It's just, if we're going from 3 million to, it looks like 700,000, if I add up all the athletic complex items, I just like to see what that's gonna look like.
That's a planning number. So what was in there last year was simply just a look forward to what we were anticipating. The 700 that you're talking about, we know that the design and permitting is going to take a significant amount of time because of the impacts to the river. That is why we don't have additional construction dollars programmed in FY25.
Okay.
The complex lighting, that is for field 5. It's very difficult to get to the lights on field 5. So we would like to switch them over to LED. They'll last longer. It'll be easier to maintain. And we'll have to get out on the field to change out the lights when they burn out. And then that cost will hopefully set us up for future expansion of that lighting system. We get 5 done, the control systems and all that, and we can be able to add on to that control system as we change out lights on the other fields. And then the building demolition is actually a facilities budget item, but the admin building that's there is continuing to deteriorate.
Which one's the admin building?
Is the one next to first coming park to the right, that lower parking lot.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, I know that. It's just in there.
So what we would
That's
like,
that old of a building, is it?
I imagine it's been here since Fulton County was running the park.
Okay.
It's before I got here. So.
Okay.
Older than I. So the hope is that we can build a new facility there that'll integrate a new office space for Sandy Springs Youth Sports and a batting facility. Putting the batting facility between 3 and 5 would basically require us to shut down field 5 for construction. We'd have to cross that field to get to the area. Plus the soil conditions of that area when we did some testing was not great for a structure. So ideally,
Place in that building?
well, we would demo that building and then use that site for a batting facility and offices. And then we're maintaining our staff at the current level.
Brent, one more question on
Sure.
Riverside Park.
Sure.
Do we anticipate that we would be doing the work and completing in 2025?
Not completely.
No, not completing, just
So that would not be, we'd start but not finish 2025. That would be a 2026.
There'll be more money that will be needed in FY 26 for it.
yeah, we hope to get the bid in so that we can realize what that true construction cost is, but the probable cost is $6 million.
So we won't even start it next year?
There's a
We should
possibility.
start it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, well, because if we're starting it, but then we're not gonna have the funding to finish it. So we're gonna be doing the work and then keeping the funding going to finish it. So in 2026, it's done.
Hopefully.
Me.
All right, next up is Ginger. Thank you, Brent.
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay.
So our numbers for this year, or rather last year, last fiscal year, our public hearings stayed about the same. Most of the variances and appeals stayed, the numbers were the same. Our business license reviews went down. Don't really have an explanation for that. That's the number that gets sent over to us from revenue. We review for them. Our zoning certifications went down, probably due to the decrease in buildings being sold over last year. Text amendments were also down. Oh, I did a bad thing. Okay, thank you. Permits processed were down about 1,000 from last year.
Ginger,
Yes.
what's included in that business license reviews?
So it's their new business licenses and renewals that are included in that.
Didn't we just talk about bringing back a company we used several years ago to monitor the business licenses because we're not getting all the businesses to get licenses that are supposed to be licensed in Sandy Springs?
Well, Tim, if you look at that sheet, you'll see that the number of business licenses.
Yeah, it's down to 660.
Well, that's just how many they've reviewed.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that all of them have, that's how many dropped, but it is an indicator that the number of business licenses are not what they should be.
Right.
So, yes, we need to take a look at that. And we had discussed that at the last council.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Text amendments, we only had 2 last year. Here we go, permits processed, we are down about 1,000 words last year. Our plan reviews, however, were up. I attribute that to people coming back for amendments to their approved drawings. Inspections performed is pretty consistent. Our developer meetings have been steadily increasing, and we're finding that they're going way beyond our capacity currently. So we're having to schedule outside our Thursdays to accommodate some of the extra meetings.
Is that because you anticipate that a lot of projects are about to go into the pipeline, developers beginning to at least accept the fact that money's not going to get cheaper and decide if they're going to build, they better go ahead and build, or what's driving it?
I think that's part of it. A lot of it is, if you recall, during our review process, once you hit 3, you have to come in for a developer meeting, so that's mandatory. It also is a function of stop work orders, notices of violation, citations. So anytime these folks are brought in on those matters, we have them come in for a Thursday meeting so that you can discuss how they move forward to correct it.
And my experience has been a lot of residents don't even know about this, and then when they do, they really are grateful to you and your staff for these meetings.
Thank you. Code enforcement cases, our complaints are up. I believe it's due to people kind of coming out of COVID and kind of getting back in the community and starting to see what's going on out there and folks calling in complaints. Our notices of violation have gone up, citations have gone up. Business license inspections were down to kind of go along with the number that we saw previously. Gas station sweeps went down just a little, but that's around the number that we should have. Sign enforcement was up a little bit. Apartment sweeps is about the same, but as you know, we're starting that new process this fiscal year. So we'll see different numbers, and I'll be reporting on that next year. Our short-term rental numbers are down, and these are complaints that we have to deal with. So that's a good number to see go down. And then just to round out all the reviews, so you can see how the reviews were broken up by our divisions. The building department had around 3,000, land development 5, planning and zoning 3,000, and then the others are 2,000. So that kind of rounds everything out for the annual reviews. And these are I call them paper touches for each one of our reviewers, and how many times they have to look at drawings for these permits that we have. Our requested enhancements, small tools and equipment is 4,000. This is for equipment to be used in our apartment suite program. And then we have status quo on our employees, so we're not asking for anyone extra. Any questions?
So I think, are we still planning on doing the design standards?
Yes.
So will we get more information on like the big upcoming activities at one of the other upcoming workshops?
Yes, and that was already funded in the FY 24 budget. So staff has been working on the scope of work for that. And we should be able to get that RFP out on the street to select a partner for that.
Good.
Well, you can look at the business license numbers and tell we need to step up, do a little bit more enforcement.
We are planning to include funding in the finance department to have a consultant come in and help us with auditing the business licenses.
It's clear that the trend is not in the right direction.
Typically, when we do our investigations on the enforcement end of the business licenses, it's because it's a list we get from Tony's team. And that's why we go out. We just don't have the manpower to go out to every business. So it's just the ones that they find are not compliant.
So Ginger, we're switching over to the new software, right?
Yes.
So will that affect any of this, you think?
Hopefully not.
Smoother?
What's that?
Make any of this smoother?
Hopefully we'll get less complaints. It'll be easier on the user end. It won't be as cumbersome for us to generate a lot of these numbers that you see here. We're moving right along smoothly. We're right on schedule. So hopefully, probably in June, we're going to be making that transition.
Good. Ginger, the number of complaints about permitting issues, those are dropped dramatically. When we get one and I provide them with the facts, they go back to their engineer and architect and other people and have more intense conversations with them about the failures on that end rather than on our end. So you guys have done a much better job keeping my inbox empty. So thank you.
That's our goal. Thank you.
Quick question. What plans does your team have to fund? Are you all funding any new planning exercises in this budget, in this fiscal year budget? I just saw some stuff from the.
What's
I saw MARTA, maybe that's.
So you'll note on the ballot this year, there is a planning item that we will talk about, the perimeter small area plan update. We had originally had in the 5-year CIP a MARTA small area plan update, but because we are working, Marty's team are working on the Peachtree Dunwoody corridor and TOD study. We didn't feel like we needed that MARTA plan update, and quite frankly, the perimeter area could use some of our attention more so than that.
There's a significant amount that's slated to go to the comprehensive plan.
Yes, it's almost time for a major update. So we need to start that about 18 months ahead of when we plan to adopt. So we won't do any of that funding this year, but that will be in next year's budget. And that'll be a hefty number. I think for our last major 10-year update, that was about $1 million.
Yeah.
So we'll see where we end up this year, but that will be a large number.
It looks like we were planning to do 750 this year and 250 next fiscal year, but.
And we've scheduled that out, and we now know we don't need it this year, but we will get started on that right away in FY26.
There's a lot of work going on about MARTA and the BRT, particularly along 285 from Tucker over to Smyrna. It probably would be good if we had them in to do a work session for council so they can see kind of where we are in that process. I missed the last meeting, but MARTA has a working group of mayors along the northern part of 285 to connect the areas around from Tucker all the way to Smyrna. Ultimately, that will connect Kensington Station all the way over to the home station. But you need to know kind of what the plans are for this area. They still haven't identified any stations that I know of, like Roswell Road would be the only Sandy Springs station. And there are a lot of questions about how they connect in. There's discussion right now about taking the BRT and instead of stopping it at North Springs, it would stop at North Springs, but would also continue to connect from 400 to the 285 BRT. So it wouldn't necessarily, everything would end at North Springs under the studies that they're doing. So council and the community need to be updated on what's going on in that.
Who's funding this, Rusty?
They're working, MARTA is covering most of it. I mean, we've had to pay a little bit of money here and there to kind of cover some studies, but it's being driven by MARTA right now. It started with a task force of mayors, and then MARTA has kind of taken over. And they have a consultant that's working. So, it's been a little premature to talk about it, but now I think would be a good time for the council to be apprised of what the conversations are.
And are they talking to GDOT? Because I just saw Tim Matthews give a presentation about the Georgia 400 extension, of course, which is now, they've already got bids coming in May. So if there's going to be changes to the southern end of that, somebody needs to start talking to them.
Well, no.
And crosswise west to east, he was talking about those two contracts. They're ramping those up as well.
The BRT will simply operate on the new managed lanes. So there will whatever GDOT builds, that's what the BRT will operate. The question.
285?
Pardon?
On 285?
285 and 400. The question comes is where do the stations go? Where's the money for the stations going to come?
Mm-hmm.
You'll recall Governor Deal set aside money to do some planning on 400 for station location.
100 million.
Right. So that money's still sitting out there. The question is how they integrate all of that into a single system. What the 400 piece and the 285 piece are really being done separately by MARTA, but the conversation I've always assumed they would stop it. You would get off at North Springs and catch the bus,
on the train, yeah.
or catch the train. But if you're going from Windward to the Brave Stadium, why would you get off and go to one stop, catch the BRT to go? So that's what is in the process of being considered right now, is how all that stuff integrates. No real answers yet, but now would be a good time to brief everybody about what the conversation's been to this point.
John, where did you see the
Just
Tim
make sure
Matthews?
Todd's involved with this because
Oh, they are.
going ahead here.
They are.
I'm sorry.
Where was the Tim Matthews presentation? Is that something live or?
So, no, CID had their monthly meeting. I'm on PCID board, had a monthly meeting last Wednesday, and he came in primarily to update PCID on the status of the 400 project as well as the status of the 285 project. So
Can we get him to come to one of our meetings?
Sure. We can ask.
it was pretty interesting to see, because they're
It's been a
doing,
while since they've been out to talk. So that's
Yeah.
good.
yeah, and he's got a nice summary. He could probably present the same summary to us, talking about what they're doing. And he was saying that, well, he needs to come talk to us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
How much of what we refer to as the perimeter small area is PCID? Is part of our slice of PCID?
I think all
All of it?
of it. It's in.
Well, the Fulton County part, we only got.
Well, yeah, that, you know, that piece, you think they might have an interest in helping fund the plan? No?
Oh, they might. They're actually very interested in the Peachtree Dunwoody corridor plan that we're working on.
The trail.
No, the assessment of Peachtree Dunwoody, all the way up along the MARTA station, past the MARTA station up to Spalding. They're really interested in it. In fact, they asked me how fast it was going. I said, well, it's going as fast as it's going, but we're supposed to get results back by, see how I answered that one? That was
Yeah,
good, huh?
that's
Yeah, that was good.
But they're supposed to have, I think we're getting results back by June, Mark?
Study's supposed to wrap up, we're on a timetable by the end of this year. We'll get some initial results in public outreach, et cetera. I think the calendar puts it toward the end of this
Because
year.
they were talking about having some of this information in the summer.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yeah.
Because they're really interested in that,
transit-oriented
okay.
Development study around the station, so, yes.
okay.
So that could be an option.
Okay, next is Bill with the Performing Arts Center.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. So I want to take a look at the signature events. We're kind of evaluating how they're operated and looking to request a slightly smaller number, but maintain the same number of events as we have. You can see the farmers market and Concert by the Springs, City Green Live, everything that we've had this year is still included. And we're going to add, we're looking to add the Oktoberfest, which is a city green activation. It's a food and beverage and entertainment event, but still bringing it in with a slightly less budget than we had this year.
Can we talk about Veterans Day?
Veterans Day, we found it doesn't cost our department anything. So we're not eliminating Veterans Day. It's just doesn't come out of our budget.
Is there any value to like looking at internally, like, do you all look at sort of the per person cost, or is there any value to doing that for these events?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're doing at this point. A lot of the bigger events are estimated attendance but we're trying to see that the money that we're putting towards it is lined up with the people that are coming to see it.
Is $700 the total number for a farmer's market?
That's
20
attendees.
Those are the attendance.
Is that total, like every week? Like, I mean, is that every week added up? I mean, what is that?
That would be the average for the week, but we all know the first farmer's market of the year, which was not this past Saturday, but the one before that, I believe we probably had 2,000 people during that time period, but there are some light.
So you're saying, right, so on average, 700 people per week at farmer's market.
In 23.
All right, and then are we saying on average, 2,500 people per City Green Live performance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a total. So none of the multi-days are totals. So
No.
like Bluestone, 15,000, not a total. That's per day.
No, that is a total what we
That's the total.
That was one
estimated.
event, 3 days.
That like
It was 2 days though,
Yeah.
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 So that's everybody. Okay.
Oktoberfest, huh?
Yes, it's this budget.
Kind of replaces the festival that we used to have.
Oktoberfest does.
Well, Bluestone.
I'm sorry, I was wrong.
No, Bluestone's already there. That's a new one.
That's a new.
It's a new
activation.
I got them mixed up.
I'd be interested to see what happens with it.
And I want to take a look at space utilization, as you can see, excuse me. We posted over 1,000 events in all of our facilities throughout the campus. We had food and beverage events. We had 334 events this season. We anticipate, as you can see in the year to date, we're about the same as we are this year. I know that we are going into a busy season and we are tracking a little bit better than we did last year.
We don't have much history on how many events we've had in the past. Do you have any feel about how much it's increasing?
We've been looking back to like 22 where we do have some data. And we do show that there has been growth, especially now. It's hard to tell coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So as far as I can evaluate, I'm seeing that we are getting much more attention and people are starting to come back out. But again, that's based on the pandemic numbers that I have, that I can see from here.
Well, ticket sales have been reasonably strong.
They've been very strong. I mean, we've been covering expenses and
Are we covering expenses on our?
on most of our shows. Yeah, we do a pro forma per show that we do. And we are coming out ahead on the actual act cost and the actual cost of operating the show. We've had a few that we didn't quite make it, but we have made some money on several of our shows.
Do you have the snapshot for 22 as well?
I don't have it here.
I know, but do you have it?
We can
We
get
can
it.
get it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Joe?
Do we adjust our pricing for, months that are slow, like August, January, October?
We actually do our pricing based on, for the theater, based on the act that's coming in and, but we do not really restructure our third floor pricing or conference center pricing is what it is.
Do we think, go ahead.
The Buyers Theater, like, if we adjust that one?
The Buyers Theater is based on the act. So if we have,
But in August, we're saying that it was only rented out 3 days, is that what I'm reading, is that, am I understanding that correctly?
that's for the lobby. So we do events in the lobby.
Right,
So based on the usage of the theater, it's not really available that much. So when we can squeeze an event in, we will, like,
Some
the
of those are
top one says
multi-day.
Buyers
No.
Theater and Lobby, 3 days, and then it says Buyers Library exclusive 1 day in August.
Those were not events. Some of those are multi-day events, like when City Springs Theater Company is here. That's counted as one event, but it may be over a 3-week period, so that there may actually be 21 days that the space is in use, that it's not available for anyone else to rent.
The ballot available as part of the agenda pack?
I'm not sure.
Well, we need to see what we can do to increase the utilization of the studio theater lobby. Yeah, 'cause that's a smaller, the lobby's much smaller, so it can only accommodate, but yeah, we got reasonably good theater, studio theater utilization, but
We'll go back and add in as well the number of days plus the number of events that align with these, so that it's a little more clear to go to your question.
So that number of 1,015, is that the number of events that have taken place in different rooms, or is that the number of, like?
it's the number of events on the campus, but like you just said, some of them, like City Springs Theater Company, that's a 3-week run, but it's counted as one event on
and
this
the
chart.
Church Film Festival the same way.
Same way, everything, if it's, because it's kind of based on contract.
Roswell Dance Company the same
Same
way.
thing.
So that's the number of events you're
Yes.
talking, yeah, it's not.
So
Not
really not
the day.
capacity utilization assessment.
Days, right? How are the finances on this? Are we breaking even on this thing, or are we
So-
we're having to subsidize this.
We are not subsidizing from the general fund. There is a transfer that goes from hotel motel tax to support the operations.
Right.
For FY 25, we again are not proposing to subsidize from the general fund. There will be a transfer from hotel motel. And then they actually do have some fund balance that we will be proposing some utilization of the fund balance to balance everything out. There is a big push Bill and I've been talking about to get out and seek out sponsorships for a number of our outdoor events. There's
Right.
a lot of opportunity, especially with the Sandy Springs Foundation coming online and being able to get partners within the community to donate for naming rights to support those.
So like the ice skating rink was one
Right.
event,
Yep. That was one event, but it was
but it
over.
was over 2 months.
Mhm.
And every person that skated there was a client of Georgia Power.
Exactly, yeah.
That's right.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had some conversations Friday night about some people who got some interest in
Yep.
sponsoring. So it's just, we've just got to get out there and start.
We got it, yeah.
Started doing it for Juneteenth, which is new and fresh and small. But the fact that they have some interest there, it's also pretty promising.
Yeah, you're doing great, actually. So I'm asking if we can increase the talent fees. That's what pays for the self-presented shows in the theater. And I want to start doing more in, like you just mentioned, in studio theater. And then the in-house uniform situation we found we started this with Skate City Springs. So we had all those people that we brought in through the staffing service, they all had logoed shirts. Rather than developing a wardrobe department, we use Cintas to come in and they provide the shirts. They provide cleaning for the shirts, they repackage the shirts, and they provide a machine that dispenses the shirts. So I don't need a full-time person to play wardrobe mistress. So we would like to continue doing that, but not just with City Spring, City Skate. We want to do it with all of our packs. So culinary, front of house, technicians. So we're going to package all of our departments.
Bill, when we bring in an artist, like, I think the one I just bought the tickets for, Johnny Mathis, we're bringing him in November.
Yes.
What does that actually cost us?
The act itself, Johnny Mathis, is $75,000. We put marketing dollars behind it. And then operating it will cost probably another maybe $10,000. But the ticket prices well exceed those costs. So we will, prediction from me, we will break even on Johnny Mathis or make money.
Each artist is a different fee.
Yeah, it's all different.
There's no, you know,
Like,
even an average doesn't give you an idea of what you're talking about.
Chris Body is, I think, 17.5. So, we're going after all different ranges.
Is that about the high we'd spend is somebody like Johnny Mathis? How much did we
Yeah.
spend for
Perlman was,
Perlman?
it was 100.
It was
Maybe
100?
Yeah.
It was 100, but part of this too, the Kevin Hart deal, it's like Perlman, for me, is a marketing expense almost. We luckily made money, or broke even. But really, I want people to know that we have a theater here. And that's the whole reason for bringing Johnny Mathis, Judy Collins, Kevin Hart. So, but the structure that we've created, those elements are paying for themselves.
How many days a year is the big theater being utilized? And I'm wondering how much more availability you have to work with of booking people.
So with the theater company, and they're in 4 times a year, they use 3 weeks. It really limits what we have available to bring in the bigger acts. But I'm anticipating next year of doing about 20 to 24 self-presented acts in there. And then we also bring in promoters that rent and do some of the artists as well.
That would be 24 of people you would hire,
that we would.
like Johnny Mathis's.
Yes. And then, again, I'm starting to focus on studio a lot more too. The other thing to understand about studio is if we have something in the big theater, it's hard to also do something in studio. So it's kind
At
of
the
a,
same time.
yeah, we play Tetris all the time between big theater, the third floor and studio. Like, where does it all fit in? Amy goes crazy trying to make everything.
Well, you gotta manage parking and everything else.
And that's a big one too.
So that limits how many events we can have because we've got limited parking available to us. So that puts a cap on, you know, how many days he's got.
What do we have, 280 parking spaces, something like
Well,
that?
we've got the parking lot across the street parking, and then on certain events, we go out and obtain additional parking, but, you know, coordinating all that limits one of the reasons why we need parking, you know, so more utilization out of this campus.
Quick question I have, for some of the more seasoned, elected officials here. The performing arts side of our work, was it always envisioned to break even or envisioned to be revenue generating? Like, what was the vision for it? Like, just the money part of
The
it?
original estimate was that it would be a permanent $2 million subsidy from the city.
Okay.
But we're figuring that would disappear.
Oh, no, at one point, the long term was about $500,000.
Yeah.
That was initial, it would fade out over time, but never go away.
Yeah.
But we are well ahead of schedule on break even.
So, all right, I understand that. It's just, I wonder what, you know,
We
what more they
operated-
could do.
Yeah, we operated it on the assumption that it was like recreation.
Right.
That the city would have to subsidize it. But you're right, it did decrease, but it never went away. We're doing better than what the timeline said. I mean, it's not that it's never gonna be a revenue generator. We never went into it with the idea that we would make a profit running a theater. I don't think even William Shakespeare didn't make money on his theater unless he wrote something.
Do we have a list of all the performances and how much it cost and what we made?
Yeah, we can.
I guess I wonder if, since that was the vision, if a small amount could help toward actualizing or improving,
It was seen as a service, as a community service to our residents.
And I believe it still is. That's sort of where I'm coming from, which I mean, it's great.
As I say, I got my tickets right here.
Right, I think it still is. Maybe there's an argument for a small subsidy, to help them.
Well, if it's necessary, we will. We're trying to, I think they've done a very good job of managing the money. It's not nearly as much of a loss as we anticipated.
Or we had during the pandemic.
Yeah. So they're doing a good job of managing it.
Yes, excellent.
Have you all done like a market study or whatever it's called to help you target in terms of your marketing for shows and all that?
Yeah, that was done. Michael Pauken did one right before I got here. So
Okay, so
I
that
do
was-
have one. So
What,
it's
2
pretty
years
current.
ago? A year?
I've only been here a year.
Yes.
Okay, so we had a
Last
market.
year.
Mike was here about a year, so about halfway through his tenure.
Also, as I mentioned before, I'm asking for $30,000 for the Oktoberfest on the Green. Again, it's a 2-day food and beverage and entertainment event. And then I'm asking to increase the cost of goods for food and beverage is just skyrocket. So I'm asking for more funding for that. At the same time, we need to reevaluate what we're charging. We just did an analysis of food and beverage and we're the lowest cost catering in the area. So we need to look at that.
Are you including the city bar in this?
Mhm.
In the cost of food and stuff like that? Is that breaking even yet?
Getting there. We're getting there. So we just, we're working out the pre-order software I've been talking about for months. And it should launch real soon. I think once we do that, then we're gonna market out to the community. So you can actually go on your phone and order your food and go pick it up. And we think that'll make it more palatable for people that aren't actually in the building.
So is this cost of food and beverage over and above the revenue from the food and beverage? Or are you gonna try to reconcile that? So you may not actually have to spend all this money.
We're just gonna try to reconcile it by looking at our fee structures.
But they're still going to have to spend that money. We're going to have to balance it by increasing on the revenue side what we are charging for food. Because our plated prices and our buffet prices are just, they're rock bottom prices, which was the right thing to do in the beginning, but we need to be competitive.
Yeah, and it was always, again, back to this whole profit center. This is a city paid for facility. So it never felt right that we should make this some huge profit center. It's a city amenity. We can break even. In fact, we all were resigned to the fact that we're gonna have to support it every year for X amount. So if this thing can break even over the year by this balancing, then we also can say to the citizens, we're not gouging you here. We're keeping our prices competitive or better because it's a city amenity. That was always the thinking behind it. Let's just.
Well, and that's still our goal, but we're so below what the average is in the area. We can still offer that great opportunity just at a fair market value for us.
That's great, good.
Do you have metrics, Bill, on how many people attend that are Sandy Springs residents versus non-residents?
We can pull that from ticket sales based on zip codes.
Do you do that?
I always ask, during the concert, and lately we've gotten more Sandy Springs residents than last time I asked the question. I was kind of surprised at how many Sandy Springs residents we have, because we do bring in people from all over. And I was an overwhelming majority the last time I asked that question was Sandy Springs.
I think a lot of people have decided they don't want to go downtown to the Fox and they would rather come here.
Well, you'd be surprised at the number of people who live at Bluestone and around here who sit out there with a glass of wine and listen to our concerts and never show up here.
We need to be charging them.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Well, they feel like they already are. They have to put up with it.
For my only capital request, I'm requesting $80,000 for a portable LED wall. It's a 20 by 32 foot LED wall that is requested often here. It can be used as a backdrop to shows on the stage. It can be broken down into smaller units and used all around the facility. And if we rent one for a client, which sometimes we have to do, it's a good $4,000 or $5,000 rental. So we can, if we own it, we can now offer it as a rental device for all of our renters.
What's the life expectancy on something like that?
A good 5 years, but probably longer if you're not using it all the time.
So that would look like the back of the bathroom wall. It's just a movable one. Because we have a screen on the back of the restrooms, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually very fun to watch.
And it would actually be much clearer because it's a better resolution.
Would it be like the one in City Bar?
Yes.
The new one, yes.
The new one.
That's nice.
But the old one only lasted about, what, 3 or 4 years?
The problem with that one was it was individual panels and the panels started going out. So the newer ones are larger and crisper and purported to last longer, but we know this one will also be rentable. So meaning we can make it available if somebody's planning an event and they would like to rent it as part of their program, we will be able to set it up for them.
Okay.
Full-time, we're gonna go status quo, keep it going. We are based on, now that we know how the skating rink went and the number of people that we need for the skating rink, we are asking for some more part-timers to try and support that. So we don't have to use staffing as much as we did. We use a staffing company this year until we evaluated what it really was, so.
So the 27 additional people are gonna be for the skating rink?
No, that's not additional. 27 is their current staffing number. The difference between the 13 and the 40 are the part-timers for the skating rink.
Those are paid, part-time paid people?
Yes.
Did we break even on the skating rink or make money?
I don't.
I think I'm pretty.
We were very close, but I'll get you that number too.
Did you say we were hiring someone for development? Did we talk about?
We're still discussing that. Yeah.
Okay.
How many volunteers do we have that how, don't we have pretty big
We-
volunteer staff?
We have a huge volunteer, anywhere, according to when you ask, it's anywhere from like 100 to 300 volunteers that are using the theater. One of our goals is to now get get some volunteers that'll work the outside events and be not so theater centric.
Volunteers like to usher because they get to see the place too. Performances too.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay,
Thanks, Bill.
thank you,
Thank
Bill.
you. You're welcome.
It's actually a very positive outlook for this whole tax thing.
All right, next up is information technology. We're gonna try to push through because I know that we have taken a little more time tonight.
Just a touch.
I know. So in IT, the requested enhancements this year are related mostly to cybersecurity, which I know will not surprise any of you that we continue to place a very strong focus on protecting our network and ensuring that we do not have unfortunate occurrences. In this case, what we are adding is a new software program that will give us a second or actually a third line of defense against intrusion. We've also added $20,000 to help us as we begin to investigate the power of artificial intelligence and the various solutions that we can use to help be efficient and more effective in service delivery.
We're also gonna need some guidelines to people internally who use AI. Make sure that we have guardrails that they don't wander off. And
You read my mind, and you're gonna hear about that in just a minute as well. We have a draft, but we are working to refine that, and you'll hear about that in just a minute. We've also got funding included for an enhanced text notification system. The system that we are currently using, we have had for probably 15 years. It is not the industry leader. It is no longer as robust of a product as what is available. So we will be transitioning to a new program called Everbridge, which has turned in to be more of the industry leader that is working in the field. We also have 2 new staff proposed for IT. One is a senior web developer. For many years, communications department has been using an outside contractor to help with development and customization of our website. We've had challenges with that, and we've realized that we need to have some redundancy and have that brought in-house. So we are proposing a new position that will be their full-time job. We also have an additional security administrator who will be also to support our existing network security administrator. Just to give you a taste of how many requests come in related to security. Last year alone in 2023, we had 586 security related service requests. That was 12% of our total service requests for IT related strictly to security. That is continuing to grow, and so we do need some additional help to manage that and stay ahead of it. On our capital request on infrastructure hardware replacement, as you all are aware, every few years we have to upgrade or replace our network switches, our servers, and our other hardware. It's time to do that. It's the regular replacement cycle. And then workstation replacement and upgrades at 820 is a little bit higher this year because all of the police department's mobile data terminals are at end of life, and it is time to upgrade those as well. That is included here. Any questions about IT?
all right, before we go to communications, we've been sitting for a while. Let's take a 5-minute.
Perfect. All right, as I mentioned earlier tonight, we have, Caroline, it's not. Thank you.
Social media specialist.
We are currently in the process of rebidding call center services, so we will know the firm number for that as we get further along in the budget process. We are requesting one additional FTE within communications this year for someone that will be a social media specialist. This will be their full-time job. Over the last few years, we've been more reactive on social media as opposed to proactive and getting our message out. This position will help us grow that and expand our reach to make folks be aware of not only the city itself, but also offerings within the Performing Arts Center and on the city green. We also have $60,000 in the capital budget for the continuation of the outdoor art program with Art Sandy Springs.
Is that our,
That's the outdoor art.
Is that the number we use every year?
It's been $50,000, but we've always had to cobble money together to help pay for the installation for the rest of it. So we've added that in here this time.
Is there any way that we can think about doing something besides the sculptures? I mean, I feel like we have so many sculptures in Sandy Springs that maybe we look at doing some art for downstairs or.
Sure. If you've got specific ideas about it, send it to me and we'll do our best to get them to help us with that.
Didn't we do a mural at the, or the Hawks did the Hawks
There
did a
was
mural or
one
something?
a long time ago. Yeah.
At Morgan Falls, they did it. That's.
At Morgan, at the
Yeah, that's 5-6 years
athletic
ago.
complex.
Well, we can do, instead of sculptures, do big pieces for downstairs and then pick one piece and start putting art around here. We have a lot of sculptures. But I'll send you.
We got a lot of walls
Okay.
around here that could use
Yeah.
art.
So there was a indoor art plan that was done for this building. The price tag for that is massive. I've looked at it probably a year and a half ago and had a conversation with Art Sandy Springs, and they were wanting us to appropriate $350,000 to $400,000 to start buying art. It was tough to prioritize that over some of the other things that.
We can buy one piece like we did the sculpture, instead of on sculpture, buy one piece each.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we have the rotating art exhibit downstairs is to help get some and provide some exposure to local artists.
Have any of those artists actually contributed a piece of art to the city?
I'm not sure we've really gone out. Some of them have indicated that they would. We haven't necessarily followed through on it.
That might be a good way for us to go ahead and do that. Have a permanent collection, other than John's got a piece down there. That mosaic.
Oh, yeah, but that's a community piece.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's
it
a
would
different
be
deal.
an idea for us to ask the artists if they would like to contribute.
I think a bunch of them would say, well, if I ever sell anything, I might. But, well, I don't know how much money they're making down there. I don't think they're making much. Anyway.
Let us also look at the current agreement with Art Sandy Springs because it's related to the outdoor art program. I believe they've already put out the call for sculpture for this year, but we can look at changing it going forward if there's a desire of council to stop doing the outdoor program sculpture-based and do something different. Finally, in the city manager's office, we are requesting one additional position this year, a director of data strategy and analytics. And what this position will be responsible for is coordinating all of our performance management efforts, our data initiatives, and ensuring that we are aligned. Right now, we are not connected with all of the different data programs that we are currently using. I don't have one person that we can go to do all of this. This person will also be responsible for being our AI lead and helping us develop our plan for appropriately implementing the use of AI to enhance service delivery.
Ian, what type of background would a person like that have ideally?
Ideally, someone with a master's degree in either business administration or public policy or public administration. PhD would also be ideal with a specific focus on SPSS and statistical analysis. We are still in the process of developing what that job description would look like, but there will definitely be a lot of attention being focused on utilizing data, managing data better predict trends and help us stay ahead of that across the organization.
Didn't we have a study done by, what was it, Georgia Tech on that particular area a couple of years ago? Didn't we have some Georgia Tech graduate students that did a study for us on something like that?
We had just had a group of Georgia Tech, we've got two Georgia Tech studies going on. One was on economic development
Right.
and the other is on housing.
Okay.
We'd gotten some preliminary results from the economic development, which was actually doggone good work. We'll share that with everybody and then we're still waiting, hopefully fairly soon, we should have the housing study done.
I was thinking it was on analytics.
No, the one on economic development was top-notch work.
So when will we be able to put our eyes on it? The economic development.
When, are they just about done?
Not their report.
Okay, so they've
We
got,
just received that, so we'd be happy to.
We can share it.
it's just been in the last week or so that we've gotten it.
So Eve, one final thought, I'd like to see if anybody else, any other cities, have they ever hired a data strategy and analytics person? Does this position exist somewhere else and how's that working?
Yes, their larger cities will pull together where they are, but one is, Austin, Texas, has an office that is focused strictly on management and budget, basically is what it's turned into. So it informs the data decisions that council needs to know as we start planning our future efforts, but that's not a problem.
I think it's a good idea, but I think it's gonna be hard to find somebody who could do all that, because there's a lot of work there.
Well, everything is data-driven nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not managing that at the highest level, you're not getting particularly with big
I
data.
agree. I could see it being hard.
I think there's more availability in the private sector than there will be having the knowledge in a municipal.
We're on the cutting edge with this. There's a handful of cities that are already doing this, but again, they are much larger cities than we are. But you are correct. Within the private sector, there will be.
And they may be able to find some people who can go up from the private sector to the public sector.
Can work for us.
Yeah.
All right. Next is our chart summarizing the personnel asks. I realize this is a larger increase than we have previously seen, but 8 of these positions are strictly due to growth. Our additional police headquarters building coming online, our public works, the addition of our traffic engineer, our utility coordination, the police officers and the sergeant coming on are all due to growth within the programs and the offerings that we have here in the city. Next is a summary of our contracted service providers. As all of you are aware, IXP still remains our Chatcom, our PSAP operator for E911 services. Rural Metro is actually changed to AMR, but they provide ambulance services. North Fulton Regional Radio Authority. Within facilities and fleet, we are currently working with Rupert to do the City Springs campus, dynamic security here for facility security, American Facility Services, Magic Mics for fleet maintenance. Recreation and Parks is also working with Rupert and Pro Cutters. Our general government services contractor that is currently with Fanuel, that's our call center RFP that we'll be bringing back to y'all shortly. And then within public works, we have a number of contractors that provide more of the street services that are delivered in the community. Blunt, Pateco, Pro Cutters, Russell Landscaping, Georgia Green, Tidwell, AWP. We have a selection of tree providers. You'll recall you had those on a council agenda recently. Luminate manages our traffic signals, and then Blunt also handles stormwater maintenance. Next is our nonprofit summary. Abernathy Arts Center. This is the operations of the center with Art Sandy Springs to deliver arts programming. There is a escalator within their agreement that their service goes up to $60,000 a year. Community Assistance Center. You heard from Francis Horton 2 weeks ago. He had come in and asked to have their amount bumped up to $250,000. We just increased them last year from 150 to 180, so we're recommending increasing them to 200,000. The household hazardous waste event is zero because it happens every other year, and that is going to be happening pretty soon in May or June, so it's in this fiscal year. Continuing our ongoing support of Keep Sandy Springs, North Fulton Beautiful for recycling and capital improvements at their site. The recreation grant program is being continued or recommended to continue at 150, but we will be changing that program significantly to focus more on education and on scholarships. Staff will be bringing a recommendation to you after the start of the fiscal year on what that new program would look like. Sandy Springs Youth Sports, we are increasing to 185 based on feedback from the contractor. They advised us that would allow them to service additional children with scholarships for programming. And then Solidarity Sandy Springs continuing at 25,000 contingent upon council's requirement previously that they demonstrate that they are serving Sandy Springs residents. And that's why there is a $10,000 change on nonprofits this year. Next is capital budget assumptions for the fleet fund. Community development's requesting a new truck. Fire department has administrative vehicles as well as 2 replacement vehicles that have over 100,000 miles and 1 new vehicle for the community paramedicine officer. Police replacement vehicles this year, we are scheduled to get 16 vehicles. That is our annual recurring replacement schedule. Public Works has 2 replacement trucks with high mileage, and then Recreation and Parks has a replacement truck for park staff. All right, then to summarize what you have seen already, we're going through, and I won't read all of these to you all, but this is a summary of what you've had on the slides previously. Just to touch, we talked about the outdoor art, we talked about Abernathy Art Center, going down through Public Works and Recreation and Parks for capital budget assumptions of 27,398. Many of these are assumptions because they are got to haves. There are things that we have to do. Or things that we have previously started and need to complete. For example, Old Riverside Park, we know that as a priority. We have to get that project completed. We have for many years had pavement management, sidewalk management, building out our TMC fiber, and that video wall replacement has to be done this year. This summary does not include the tree fund, the CDBG, or the fleet. We talked about fleet, the tree fund. You'll see that detail in workshop 2. It is no change from prior fiscal year. It's the same allocation. There is 1 staffing change with the tree fund that we'll be talking about in the next one. We're not adding any additional staff. We are simply splitting staff time. Previously, as you know, our urban forest coordinator was solely funded out of the tree fund. We're now going to be splitting his salary between the tree fund and general fund for parks and recreation as he takes on additional sustainability work for the city. So it makes sense to split those funds there. Any questions about capital budget assumptions? Next, then we'll go to the ballot. And knowing that we are running short on time, if council would prefer that we not go through these individual projects, the slides are here.
We can read them.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to go over them if you would like, but they are all included in your packet.
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I brought this up last year because the band shell was on the last year's one. Why would we not want to go look at sponsorships to help offset that cost?
We certainly can.
Really?
Part of year 1 is to get started with the design work of it because this would not fully fund it. This, if it is approved on the ballot this year, it would go forward next year to cover.
So this 1.75 is just for design?
It's design and partial construction. We're estimating it to be a little over $3 million.
Sponsorship?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I'm not responsible.
Well, you know, we are going to have to look at how we approach development. The challenge is corporate sponsors look at us as a tax-funded operation, and why should we give money to this when we can give to private entities that really do need it, don't have a public source of funding? So we're gonna have to come up with a really, it's gonna have to be a novel development program. It's not that other cities haven't done it and they have public facilities that do it. Chastain, for example, Chastain Park, City of Atlanta, you know, they had Delta, Lanier, and I forget who the third one was for years and years and years.
Hate it smell.
So, but we've got to have a plan in place. It's one thing to say we need to get sponsors. It's another thing to go out, have the processes and the mechanisms to do it. And it will take some money up front. You can't make money until you spend some money. So we'll have to figure that out rather than try and do that on the fly. This is something maybe we should be working on this next year and come back at some point in the year with a realistic plan on how we. I agree that we should be done. I think the opportunities are great. We got the concerts here. We got the skating rink. All those things are right, but we've got to have the plan and the personnel.
Are we hiring a director of economic development?
We have it posted. Yes, ma'am. We'll
Is
be,
it, okay, so it's already in the budget?
yes, it's already included. Yeah, yes, sir.
I have a general question.
Yes, sir.
Of all of that we've gone over today, how much have we figured in for inflation?
We've accounted for it.
You know, we've accounted for it, but I mean, at what? Inflation is not going away.
No,
If anything, it's getting worse. The economy is not getting better. If anything, it's getting a little softer. Fortunately, it's not hitting us that bad right now. How much of this, how much is this that we built in? Because it's not, it's gonna be bad. I mean, we're not seeing, you know, Bidenomics. We're not seeing inflation go away. But each report that comes out is indicating, you know, now the Fed's saying that they may not lower interest rates this whole year. I mean, how much have we built in to compensate for what's been going on?
So the costs that we have included in the budget this year are based on what is already considered inflated numbers from prior years. So I can't tell you that I've adjusted everything 5% up, but I can tell you that we have included everything in here with the costing that we have most recently got from vendors or estimates from vendors. That's not to say that on some of these capital projects, I won't have to come back to you, you know, mid-year or down the road and say, well, we put it out to bid and it actually is X amount more. I don't have a crystal ball for that, but we have built this budget around supporting the inflation that we're already aware of.
And the other thing that she did, which I don't think we've ever done before, was you saw very early on the analysis that Haddow and Company did on our revenue side. We've been worried about the commercial side, and we had never really done a deep dive into what the impact of decreasing. I mean, once you see all the numbers, you're going to see that the absorption rate in the perimeter market has been pretty drastic over the last 3 years. There's a lot of, the vacancy rates are a little concerning, but the biggest concern is the fact that this space is not being absorbed as much, and that's going to have a long-term impact. Eden got ahead of it by getting the reason we haven't cut the revenues further is because the analysis shows that it hasn't really hit yet, but it's coming in the next 2 or 3 years. It's not that the revenue picture, particularly on commercial real estate, is not going to improve. Good news is it hasn't been that painful yet.
Yeah.
So we're getting squeezed on the revenue side and we're getting squeezed on the cost side.
Right.
And the balloon will pop in the middle if we keep doing that. So she's done a pretty good job of trying. Most of it, the numbers that you've seen in there are the quotes we're getting from vendors right now to extend the contracts for next year. So that's what's baked in. And some of it's more than the 3.5% to 5% rate you're seeing.
you saw out there 40-50% increases for certain things that we're having to buy. Insurance, police equipment, all those things are much higher than the overall rate of inflation. And to the extent that we can determine exactly what those costs are, she's baked them in the budget.
And one other thing I'll add to that, Mayor, while we all lament the fact that it takes so much longer to get capital projects accomplished, the beauty of it is because we do have funding appropriated for those and they are invested, we are projecting, and you'll see this in the line item detail, interest rates may not be going down for us to do things, but we're also getting paid more for the investment that we have. So we're projecting that we will earn $8 million in interest next year. And that's actually less than what we're going to get in FY 24 off of our current. So you'll see that coming, but all those numbers have been baked into this as well.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we're.
It's good. It's a good point.
It's excellent. And we've done, with the knowledge that we have now, we've done the best that we can to get as far ahead of it. And as you know, we're always very conservative budgeters.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thanks, staff. Thanks, Egan.